A lone man stares at his monitor late at night, convinced that everyone secretly believes the mother characters look far more striking than the game's official heroines ever could. Inside the game, a poised woman named Maniana greets the young hero Rady warmly, mentioning that her daughter has spoken fondly of him during their recent adventures together. Rady and Maniana clash blades across the training grounds, her graceful strikes forcing him backward until she compliments his surprising skill with a playful smile. Later, Maniana teases him from beneath the shower spray, calling him a naughty boy while he intrudes, leaving her flustered yet strangely delighted by his sudden appearance. Without warning, Maniana is struck down violently, apologizing through tears for supposedly being a terrible mother even as her body crumples against the cold stone floor. Back in reality, the man reacts furiously to her death, slamming his desk moments before his phone buzzes with an unexpected message from the game's development team. He hopes desperately that his repeated requests finally convinced them to create a route where mothers survive, only to discover it was merely another heroine-focused event. Frustrated strangers online mock him for endlessly nagging the developers, branding him a devoted MILF enthusiast who refuses to accept the game's established narrative direction. The title reveals itself properly: Malmagia Fantasia, an adult academy fantasy, praised widely for blending swordplay and magic into surprisingly well-crafted RPG mechanics. Two heroines stand confidently, their contrasting personalities said to represent the true charm that keeps dedicated players consistently returning to the beloved title. Yet he insists the real highlight is the stunning lineup of mother characters, despite them functioning only as side heroines lacking any independent storylines whatsoever. Tragically, most mothers meet horrific fates, whether tortured by villains, poisoned quietly, mauled by dogs, or dying while shielding the heroines and protagonist. Rady presses forward regardless, vowing to protect his companions, while the mothers' deaths are treated as forgettable obstacles rather than meaningful, memorable moments. The man screams at his screen, questioning why the protagonist never reciprocates the mother's affection, despite countless players flooding developers with identical impassioned requests. He grumbles that school uniforms would suit the elegant mothers better, scrolling through forums where fans instead gush endlessly over the youthful heroine's appeal. Alone in his dim apartment, he laments that both developers and the hero have abandoned these women, wishing he could rewrite their fate himself. Having finally completed the entire game, he sighs in resignation, stepping outside toward the stairs before heading off to another ordinary workday. Suddenly, he tumbles down the staircase, his body flailing helplessly through the air as everything around him fades sharply into disorienting darkness. He awakens inside an unfamiliar Grand Western-style mansion, disoriented and questioning aloud where exactly he is after apparently falling down some stairs. Staring at a familiar portrait on the wall, he freezes in shock, slowly realizing he might have been pulled directly into the game itself. A woman bursts through the door, asking anxiously if Demonio is alright since his frantic screaming had echoed loudly throughout the mansion's halls. He recognizes her instantly as Rosa, a mother character from the game, realizing with growing shock that he is actually inside the world of Mamafan. Momentarily thrilled, he congratulates himself for wandering into the very world he'd spent countless hours playing, forgetting entirely whose body he now occupies. Catching his reflection in a mirror, he panics upon seeing Demonio's face staring back, realizing he has become the absolute last character he wanted to be. Demonio Tridal is described as a gifted but arrogant aristocrat who once picked a fight with the commoner protagonist and was swiftly defeated. Regardless of which route players chose, Demonio always met the same grisly end, eventually losing control of his power and succumbing entirely to it. Determined not to repeat that fate, he resolves firmly that he refuses to meet a bad ending now that he is truly inside Mamafan's world. Rosa rushes to his side again, worried about his pale complexion, and he finds her presence surprisingly soothing despite his earlier panic and confusion. She is explained as Rosa Tridal, Demonio's step mother, a minor character barely featured in the main story yet unexpectedly popular among certain devoted players. She apologizes for entering without knocking, admitting she'd grown worried after hearing his loud scream echo through the mansion's quiet upper floor. She continues apologizing, insisting it was inappropriate of her to intrude, though genuine concern for his well-being had clearly outweighed her hesitation, noticing her flinch. He wonders why she looks so frightened until she cheerfully insists the faint welt on her cheek was entirely her own fault. Suddenly overwhelmed by unfamiliar memories, he watches Demonio strike Rosa violently, screaming that she only wanted his father's wealth and nothing more. He realizes with horror that these are Demonio's own memories from before his soul had been reincarnated into this troubled young man's body. Perhaps coping with his mother's death, Demonio had apparently despised Rosa completely, having lost his real mother tragically while still very young. Despite this cruelty, Rosa continued showing genuine motherly affection toward Demonio, refusing to abandon him even after enduring years of his hostility. During Demonio's final battle after losing control, Rosa threw herself forward, begging the protagonist desperately to spare her troubled son-in-law's life. Demonio mocked her cruelly even then, and in every possible route, Rosa ultimately died protecting him against overwhelming odds regardless of outcome. Overwhelmed with guilt, he embraces her tightly, apologizing sincerely, and admitting Demonio had truly been a terrible, undeserving son throughout his life. He claims it was merely rebellious teenage behavior, confessing his real intention had always been simply wanting to grow closer to her. He accidentally embraces her tightly, overwhelmed by her generous figure, muttering nervously that her chest felt impossibly massive against his own body. Rosa smiles warmly afterward, insisting he should call her Mom often from now on, pleased he'd finally accepted her with genuine affection. He agrees hesitantly, and she reassures him there is no need to rush anything, promising they could build their new family bond slowly together. As she departs cheerfully, he reflects quietly that such a kind, adorable mother deserved recognition, not the cruel death Demonio once caused her. A sudden thought strikes him. If Demonio himself had killed Rosa in the original game, perhaps he could prevent that tragedy entirely through effort. Excitement builds as he wonders whether he could personally save every neglected mother character who never received a proper happy ending before. Back in Mamafan's broader world, several subheroines remained overlooked by the official protagonist, their fates left tangled in unfortunate, unresolved destinies. Determined, he trains furiously beneath a waterfall and swings from tree branches, insisting he needs genuine power to defeat formidable enemies ahead. Being a wealthy, high-ranking noble, Demonio possessed real talent, and if he trained relentlessly while avoiding the villain's route, transformation seemed possible. He then declares boldly that unlike the original naive protagonist, he alone would personally save every mother character throughout this entire world. A monstrous wild bear roars ferociously as Tridal's peacekeeping unit hesitates until Demonio steps forward calmly, ordering his frightened soldiers to stand back. Casting an intermediate spell called Black Dance, Demonio unleashes devastating dark energy that instantly overwhelms the massive bear, crushing it in one decisive strike. The stunned knights marvel afterward, amazed their master personally handled such a dangerous beast, defeating it single-handedly with astonishing, effortless magical power. 3 months into his reincarnation, Demonio admits privately he just wants to finish quickly and return home so Rosa can praise him properly. Servants whisper amongst themselves, noting Lord Demonio now treats his household staff completely differently compared to his previously cold, dismissive behavior. They observe him training relentlessly and personally volunteering to help subdue dangerous beasts, remarking that his character seems to have shifted noticeably. Inside his study, Demonio negotiates business matters confidently while Rosa watches proudly, having become genuinely respectable as the acting head of household. After Rosa excuses herself gracefully, an elderly advisor smirks inappropriately, insisting such behavior toward Lord Demonio's stepmother simply would not be tolerated. Rosa questions nervously whether handing over important financial contracts to her was truly wise, worried she might vanish with the family's fortune. 2 smug men mock her further, insinuating she seduced Glenn using her body, hoping crudely she might demonstrate those same skills toward them. Rosa, born into an impoverished noble family, endured constant humiliation and cruel accusations of being nothing more than a shameless gold digger. Demonio recalls how his former self treated her identically, yet now firmly believes Rosa is dignified, charming, and genuinely full of love. Furious after witnessing the men disrespect his mother, Demonio unleashes terrifying dark power, warning coldly that such insolence would cost them their lives. Black tendrils violently ensnare both men, and Demonio orders them harshly to leave his sight immediately, refusing any further disrespect toward Rosa. The frightened men flee the estate, questioning aloud why Lord Demonio defended his stepmother instead of despising her as originally expected. Rosa gently scolds him afterward for losing composure, though Demonio apologizes sincerely, admitting he simply couldn't tolerate anyone disrespecting her that way. She embraces him warmly, teasingly calling him a bad boy, curious what he truly hopes to gain from making her so happy. Secretly overwhelmed, he admits privately wishing he could flirt with her forever, grateful for their surprisingly close stepmother-son relationship they now share. Reflecting further, he insists he needs far greater power, believing his true duty is rescuing every overlooked mother before Demonio's story reaches ruin. Determined to protect Rosa specifically, he resolves to obtain the rare Glen family treasure, a hidden weapon tied to an optional side quest.
Demonio rushed into the dungeon, following a memorized route created to bypass every threat. He passed ominous statues, knowing some activated traps if disturbed. Caution kept him on course. By advancing only through safe routes, he avoided monsters and reached the dungeon's deepest levels. Countless playthroughs of the game had etched every path into his mind, frustration turning into precision. Standing before the final gate, he smirked. His perfect run was almost complete. Massive chains held a blade suspended in midair. Demonio stepped closer, drawn to its ominous aura. Known as Despina, the sword possessed terrifying power capable of amplifying dark magic beyond limits. Though once worthless in the game, he now recognized its potential under his changed circumstances. With a quick pull, he claimed the blade. Its weight felt natural in his grip. A grotesque guardian appeared. Defeating this monster stood between him and the ultimate treasure. Demonio tightened his grip. Though the monster was fearsome, he had memorized all its moves. A sudden strike slammed into him. The incredible speed and force sent debris flying everywhere. Barely activating his shadow barrier in time, he protected himself from being instantly destroyed, realizing game knowledge alone wasn't sufficient. He vowed to keep his promise no matter what, despite being outmatched. He charged forward, determined to protect those he loved in this world. Demonio struggled to land a blow. The Guardian clung to the ceiling, well beyond reach. Shadow spells burst outward. His affinity for dark magic made him deadly despite the disadvantage. With mastery over magic manipulation, he decided to weaponize the villain's talents for survival. Patiently, he waited for the Guardian's flurry to end, sword ready as the monster lowered its guard. A poisonous spray burst forth. Demonio steadied himself, recognizing this vulnerable opening as his only chance to strike. Demonio raised his blade and poured all his power into one focused spell. A lance of darkness shot through the air, aimed directly at the Guardian's open maw. The spell hit its mark, shattering the weak point hidden behind rows of razor-sharp teeth. As the smoke faded, he reflected on Despina's power and how perfectly it strengthened his magic. With the dungeon cleared, he smiled in triumph, one step closer to saving the mama he cherished. A sealed woman appeared, amused by the boy who had unknowingly become her new master. Demonio froze, shocked by her sudden appearance and uncertain what power she possessed. After surviving the dungeon, Demonio returned with the cursed sword Deathpenna, without a single scratch. Feeling dirty, he decided to shower, surprised a medieval themed world still had modern comforts. Upon opening the door, he accidentally walked in on a woman changing, catching her off guard. His face turned red at once. Caught in the moment, he thanked fate for the unexpected sight. Later that evening, silence filled the room as the two awkwardly avoided each other's eyes. Demonio bowed deeply, his voice shaking with apology over the awkward misunderstanding from earlier. Instead of anger, she answered gently, her modesty only making her charm stand out even more. While she dismissed herself as old and ordinary, her eyes revealed a trace of vulnerability. Internally, Demonio admired her clever honesty, captivated by every part of her heartfelt awkwardness. Without hesitation, he praised her beauty. Hearing that, she blushed, touched by his sincere words. While they sat across the table, her attention shifted toward the ominous sword on display. Impressed by his achievement, she praised him for clearing such a dangerous dungeon alone. She recalled the dungeon's reputation, piecing together memories of hearing about its dark history. The cursed weapon Deathpenna was famous for its overwhelming power and connection to dark magic. With genuine concern, she warned him to stay cautious, her words perfectly matching the game's script. She warned him about the sword's will, believed to destroy any master it despised. He laughed it off until a strange girl suddenly emerged from the weapon. Instead of acting threatening, the girl began eating cookies happily, ignoring the situation completely. Demonio realized she wasn't part of the original game. Her presence caught him by surprise. Holding Deathpenna, he reflected on the lesson that game knowledge alone wouldn't always guarantee survival here. Demonio asked what to call her, and the girl admitted she didn't have a name to avoid saying death. He settled on Pina, a lighter nickname that she quickly accepted. With a smirk, she warned him to entertain her, or he'd be cursed on the spot. She teased him for his mama complex, clearly aware of his preferences and amused by them. Without shame, Demonio declared his devotion proudly, insisting his love for moms was his greatest strength. Demonio prepared to act early, knowing the academy phase would soon begin at age 16. Lone heroine faced a tragic fate. Determined, he vowed to save her before it began.
Maniana Velheaven, known as the Witch of Thunder, stood prepared with lightning crackling around her blade. Once an S-rank adventurer, she now served as one of the kingdom's strongest night pillars. After her husband's death, she quietly raised her daughter Monica, rarely appearing beyond the game's prologue. Though unrelated to the main story, she appeared in swimsuit events, drawing players' attention effortlessly. Her charm and beauty won over fans despite her limited screen time, making her secretly adored by many. Without warning, Maniana disappeared during the mid-game, leaving no trace within the story's events. Her unexpected return took place in Tridal's northern ruins, under mysterious and dangerous circumstances. Inside, a group of armed bandits spoke crudely, unaware their target was far beyond their reach. Above them, Monica quietly observed, her silence hiding the anger rising from their vulgar remarks. She quickly relayed the layout to her ally below, revealing a hidden passage beneath the ruins. Recognizing the pattern, he confirmed Maniana's capture happened exactly as it had in the original game. After discovering only he could see Pina, he decided to reveal everything to gain her help. With Maniana's grim fate approaching, Pina urged him to act fast if he wished to save her. In the original timeline, Maniana returned late, twisted beyond recognition and loyal to the enemy's cause. Branded and broken, she came back as an enemy, forcing the protagonist to confront her in battle. After the battle, Maniana regained her senses and sacrificed her life to protect Monica's future. A devastated player shouted at the screen, stunned by the unfairness of her tragic ending. Haunted by her fate, he questioned the game's morality and felt both anger and guilt. Despite all his pleas for a happier route, the developers ignored his desperate feedback. Now reincarnated, Demonio prepared to rewrite her story before the tragedy could begin. To conceal his identity, Demonio wore a mask and vowed to rescue Maniana without seeking any reward. He scouted the bandits' position, confirmed Pena's intel, and focused solely on Maniana's happiness. A sudden spell paralyzed the guards. His dark magic locked them in place instantly. Without hesitation, Demonio leapt forward and attacked with overwhelming speed, disarming the enemy in seconds. Pina watched in amazement, impressed by his magical control and strength despite his young age. Demonio prepared to infiltrate the underground base, dismissing the guards as nothing more than weak underlings. Inside, a sadistic captor waited, taking pleasure in Maniana's restrained state among a row of prison cells. Though chained and wounded, she glared back defiantly, refusing to surrender despite her injuries and tattered clothes. Within the hidden underground facility, Demonio rushed forward, searching for any signs of disturbance. The situation puzzled him. Maniana, a renowned warrior, shouldn't have fallen so easily to bandits. However, they weren't ordinary bandits. Her captors were elite members of the enemy's upper command. The plan was carefully designed because only someone of her strength could fulfill their twisted narrative. From afar, the original writer watched gleefully, orchestrating cruelty under the guise of storytelling authority. Demonio voiced his disgust, recognizing the writer's obsession with shock over coherence or substance. Elsewhere, Maniana sat shackled, her magic sealed, confused and powerless before the enemy's mocking taunts. A cursed collar left her defenseless, stripping both magical ability and physical reinforcement without escape. He mocked her helplessness, reducing her to little more than an object for his amusement. The aphrodisiac's effects took hold, leaving her body reacting while her mind resisted fiercely. Greedy men closed in, convinced their authority allowed cruelty without consequence inside the hidden facility. Fear surfaced as Maniana realized escape was impossible. Her strength sealed while danger crept closer. Memories returned of her resolve to become strong, protecting her family through discipline and unwavering effort. Despite discrimination and scorn, perseverance shaped her into a skilled royal knight through hardship. Steel met force as she once overcame overwhelming threats, proving skill could defy brutal intent. Maniana endured countless trials for her daughter's sake, burying her pain behind silent strength every day. Despite all she'd overcome, her current predicament left her powerless before those determined to break her. Tears welled up as shame and helplessness overwhelmed her. Thoughts of her daughter pierced her heart. Suddenly, a sharp cry rang out. The assailant recoiled in agony, his hand struck with decisive force. A masked figure emerged, blade in hand. Demonio stood between her and danger, his gaze unwavering. Demonio swiftly took down the first attacker, disabling him with precision and overwhelming presence. One captor fled down the corridor, clutching a suspicious object tightly while Demonio pursued him. Maniana, left behind and confused, struggled to understand the sudden turn of events.
A sharp projectile hit its mark. Demonio brought the fleeing man to the ground effortlessly. Cornered and trembling, the man pleaded, blaming his orders as Demonio approached without a word. The captor revealed a cursed tool, claiming it could completely suppress Maniana's strength. On his knees, he begged for mercy, offering the artifact as a desperate bargaining chip. Demonio's companion mocked the pitiful display, while his thoughts briefly faltered at a flustering suggestion. Regaining focus, he lunged forward, striking with righteous fury that sent the man flying. With the orb in hand, Demonio glared coldly. "What do you take women for?" Though confident in his stance, Demonio's flustered silence revealed a brief moment of inner hesitation. Chained inside a cold cell, the woman sat silently, her body trembling beneath the heavy coat. Tears gathered in her eyes as she looked up, quiet, heartfelt gratitude beginning to take shape. Relief washed over her as she explained nothing had happened, his presence reassuring and steady. Softly, she asked for his name, her gaze lingering with wonder and growing curiosity. He looked away, hiding his emotions, only admitting his deep admiration without revealing his identity. Demonio lifted her without warning, leaving her stunned by the boldness of his sudden gesture. They hurried down the hallway, her arms clinging tightly as his stride never slowed once. She gazed at him in awe, touched by the genuine sincerity behind his protective gesture. Reaching his tent, he gently guided her inside, urging her to rest and recover her strength. With her safe and drifting into sleep, Demonio prepared to slip away, his mission quietly complete. Demonio tried to leave quietly, but an unexpected movement behind him caused him to stumble. She fell onto him, the situation escalating beyond his expectations in a sudden, awkward collision. His senses struggled to remain calm under the pressure of their closeness and her overwhelming presence. Caught in a misunderstanding, Demonio tried to explain as the tension rose inside the confined space. Overcome by confusion and rising warmth, she lost control while he faced the moment in disbelief. Demonio lay frozen beneath her, overwhelmed by her sudden boldness and unexpected physical strength. Her emotions poured out uncontrollably, driven by confusion and a desperate longing for warmth and comfort. Without warning, she closed the distance between them, acting on feelings she could no longer suppress. Years of solitude and emotional neglect surged forward, leaving her unable to hold back any longer. Outside, the commotion continued unnoticed, while a small companion reacted with disbelief at the intensity inside. Throughout the night, sounds from the tent startled the companion, who was baffled by their endurance. At dawn, the woman sat frozen in shock, realizing how far everything had gone. Concern filled the tent as she checked on the one still recovering inside. Despite everything, he smiled with relief, satisfied and deeply grateful for her presence. The woman collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed by shame, her body trembling as guilt consumed her. Tears filled her eyes as she confessed her actions, unable to meet his gaze. Although he had saved her, she admitted losing control, driven by emotions she failed to restrain. With her head bowed once more, she offered penance, desperate to mend what she believed had been broken. Despite everything, Demonio felt no anger. Instead, he proudly reflected on the experience with satisfaction. Demonio, still calm, gently asked her to raise her head and assured her it wasn't that simple. He explained that what had happened was merely an accident and didn't bother him. Surprised by his casual response, she rose to her feet in a rush, flustered and disoriented. Now fully dressed, she addressed him formally, already aware of his status and family name. Despite her shame, she admitted feeling inadequate, comparing herself to her own daughter. Demonio firmly declared that he had no regrets, calling the experience nothing less than incredible. Despite feeling guilty, he admitted she had taken the lead while he failed to react actively. She panicked, misunderstanding his words, then insisted on finding a way to make amends. Standing silently, she waited, while Demonio wondered whether such efforts were truly necessary. A floating companion suggested accepting her offer to ease the mind of the troubled woman. Back at the Tridal family estate, Demonio considered the idea of asking her for a favor. Without hesitation, he requested training from her, firmly deciding to become her student. He explained his dedication over the past 2 months and acknowledged her as the perfect mentor. Although doubtful it would completely atone, Mama Mania accepted his request with a serious expression. Grateful, Demonio agreed, though he hinted there was something important he needed to tell her first. Mama Mania explained that despite many requests from nobles, she had never accepted a disciple before. Without warning, she rushed forward with fierce intensity, blade in hand and eyes fixed on him. Demonio struggled to keep pace as her powerful strikes sent him flying through the air. She explained that her only way of teaching was through battle, not gentle lessons or theory. Demonio remembered her reputation in the game,
someone whose excitement grew during fierce, thrilling fights. With renewed determination, Demonio stepped forward, blade drawn, ready to face her strength head. Mania charged forward with overwhelming force, her blade aimed directly at Demonio without hesitation. He blocked at the last moment, stunned by her speed and recognizing her overwhelming magical presence. A massive blast followed her strike. Lightning ripped through the ground with devastating power and precision. Demonio retaliated with shadow spears, redirecting her magic and earning brief praise for his clever response. Watching closely, she recalled the Tridal family's legacy of mastering shadows through countless generations. Rumors surrounded Demonio, portraying him as ruthless and arrogant, feared even among fellow nobles. Yet in battle, his determination to become stronger shone through every strike he unleashed. Mania remembered his past kindness and their shared moment, questioning the truth behind the cruel gossip. Embarrassed by the memory, she scolded herself for allowing those thoughts to distract her during the fight. Sensing her hesitation, Demonio prepared to move, recognizing an opening he couldn't afford to miss. Mania recognized the spell Shadow Bind, commonly used by shadow users to restrict an enemy's movement. She dismissed its effect, confident such magic couldn't restrain someone of her power and level. Suddenly, her right leg froze in place, halting her advance and leaving her completely shocked. Demonio had compressed the spell's energy, focusing it on a single point to maximize its effect. Impressed, she realized his magical precision far surpassed what she had initially expected from him. Demonio unleashed a concentrated spell, his control flawless, while Mania stood stunned by his remarkable growth. A violent magic slash ripped through the air, forcing the red-haired woman to halt her advance. Before the enemy could respond, an explosion of energy erupted, sending a shockwave across the battlefield. Thrown off balance, Demonio crashed onto the ground, his sword slipping from his grip. He laughed, impressed by her strength, admitting defeat without resentment despite his greatest effort. Quietly stunned, she acknowledged her defeat, having been challenged by a determined 15-year-old boy. Impressed by Demonio's progress, she wondered how powerful he might become with proper training. Despite the battle's outcome, his nervousness had clearly limited his full potential. She extended a hand, encouraging him to grow further, recognizing great strength behind his unpolished technique. Conflicted emotions stirred within her, feelings blossoming where only guilt had existed moments before. Smiling softly, she promised to train him thoroughly, determined to guide his growing strength. She declared herself his master, but planned to keep their disciple arrangement hidden from the knights. Demonio raised a bold question, awkwardly concerned about the consequences of their unplanned intimacy. She teased him with a playful smile, suggesting marriage if such a result occurred. Caught off guard by his eager response, she doubted he'd want someone of her age. Surprised by his sincerity, she silently gazed at him, emotions flickering behind wide, blushing eyes. She assured Demonio that everything had been handled with magic, brushing aside the earlier tease. Trying to remain composed, he fought the flustered confusion building inside him after her reaction. Meanwhile, she struggled against the lingering effects of the aphrodisiac, overwhelmed by unfamiliar sensations and growing tension back at the Tridal estate. Their master-disciple relationship became official, though kept secret from everyone else. Servants whispered about Demonio's recognition, quietly respecting the hidden arrangement and his undeniable potential. Mania quietly cared for the flowers, her elegance drawing admiration from those aware of her new role. Determined, Demonio vowed to endure every hardship in training for the sake of his beloved mentors. Noticing a disturbance in his mana, she pointed out an imbalance near his chest. Without hesitation, he reached out, inviting her to examine his energy directly through contact. Accidentally pressing against her, the unexpected closeness left both overwhelmed in stunned silence and rising warmth. The estate remained quiet beneath the sky, a reminder that training must stay disciplined and focused. Breathless and red-faced, Demonio endured the session, overwhelmed by the unexpected intensity it required. Steam rose between them as Demonio stood still, allowing her to approach. Determined and calm, she promised to guide him herself, pressing close to observe his movements. Earlier that day, they had met by the rocky shore. Isolated from the outside world, she prepared the area for his training, ensuring no distractions would interrupt the process. Harnessing his focus, Demonio entered a trance. Like state, his energy surged, aura flickering to life as his concentration deepened. With explosive force, he lunged forward. His fist shattered the towering stone with a single strike, scattering debris all around him. Standing amid the rubble, Demonio caught his breath. Though silent, his clenched fists reflected his pride.
Mania praised Demonio's effort with a warm smile, recognizing his rapid mastery of body enhancement magic. Facing her directly, Demonio responded with confidence. No longer just a student, he fully embraced her mentorship. Sparring began with blades drawn. Though her teaching was direct and sometimes harsh, it was never reckless. Every swing he made grew sharper than the last. Watching his movements, Mania noticed the remarkable control he possessed. In combat, he absorbed everything she taught. His precision in controlling shadows surprised even her. Though experienced herself, she had never seen someone internalize such complex techniques so naturally. Mania observed closely, impressed by Demonio's growth. Despite his youth, his strength exceeded what she once possessed at the same age. Training intensified. She stood behind him, hands guiding his core. Through direct contact, she transferred her mana, hoping to increase his tolerance. Dense mana flowed into his body. The surge overwhelmed his senses. A faint smile appeared on her lips, aware the stimulation might test more than his magical endurance. Struggling to remain focused, Demonio reacted to the pressure. The unfamiliar closeness left him flustered, but he steadied himself, knowing its purpose was serious. Remaining calm, Mania warned him of real-world dangers. Enemies could exploit distraction through charm. Mania stepped close once again, assuring him that this also counted as training. Despite his confusion, Demonio nodded, struggling to maintain his composure and focus under the awkward conditions. Beads of sweat formed as his inner resolve wavered. Deep inside, he urged himself to stay serious. Their thoughts drifted in different directions, his toward discipline, hers toward emotion. Later, the two walked together toward the estate. Demonio believed he had prevented Mania's bad ending. Their bond had grown stronger, yet doubts still remained. Seated across from her at the table, he quietly reflected. The future was uncertain now that the game's story had changed. During dinner, Demonio accidentally addressed Mania as Mama Maniana. Flustered, he stood and tried to explain himself. Words spilled out in panic as he claimed he meant to say Master Mania instead, hoping to ease the awkward tension. Mania smiled gently and brushed aside the mistake. Her hand reached out to pat his head, expressing that she didn't mind being called Mama. Laughter filled the room as the atmosphere became more relaxed. Unnoticed by them, another figure watched silently from the hallway, expression unreadable. With puffed cheeks, the other woman stared at the scene unfolding. Quietly, she reminded herself that she was his real mother. Training resumed at the rocky field, but Demonio's fiery aura hinted at lingering tension. Maniana pointed, warning him about making such remarks near his stepmother. Back at the mansion, Mama Rosa welcomed him warmly. Her cheerful attitude eased his nerves after the intense session. She praised his progress, mentioning what the soldiers had reported. Demonio humbly credited his master for those achievements. Without warning, Rosa hugged him, scolding his sweaty condition. Before he could react, she nudged him toward the bath with a gentle push. Moments later, chaos erupted. Demonio found himself stripped and running through the hall in confusion, wondering how everything escalated so quickly. After gathering Demonio's discarded clothes, Mama Rosa paused. Curiosity got the better of her as she lifted the fabric closer. She recognized his scent, but it wasn't only his. A second, distinctly feminine trace lingered on the fabric, sparking suspicion. Meanwhile, Demonio relaxed in the bath, unaware of the tension building elsewhere. A sense of relief washed over him after the day's events. The peaceful moment ended when a voice beside him made a casual request. The mood shifted slightly, light banter echoing across the steamy room. Just as he replied, the door creaked open. A pair of unfamiliar legs stepped into view, capturing his full attention. Wrapped in a towel, Rosa entered the bath area without warning. Her gentle smile concealed the tension her presence created. Taking over without hesitation, she began washing Demonio's back. Her words emphasized her role in his life, reinforcing their emotional closeness with confident care. Nearby, their companion relaxed, unaware of the situation unfolding. Outside, life continued as usual. Rosa kept supporting him with meals prepared with devotion, while Maniana pushed him to his limits through strict training. Later, both women continued their guidance, Rosa through warmth and tradition, Maniana through playful challenges. Demonio found himself surrounded by two powerful maternal figures, each pulling him in different emotional directions. Under the shade of the trees, Demonio trained diligently. Rosa quietly supported him, watching every movement with care. Seasons passed. His growth became undeniable, and his mastery of magic flourished. By winter, his power had reached new heights, ready to face what lay ahead. Soon, he confronted a monstrous beast. Without hesitation, he unleashed the full force of his strength with a single sweeping strike. As spring arrived, it marked the beginning of a new chapter. Dressed neatly, Demonio prepared for his first day at the academy. His guardians saw him off with quiet pride. Both mothers stood together. Rosa wished him well with maternal warmth, while Maniana offered firm guidance. Their words echoed with trust, knowing he was ready for the world beyond their home. As Demonio approached the carriage, Rosa and Maniana smiled warmly behind him. Their presence remained in his thoughts even as he walked away. Inside the carriage, he sat quietly. The weight of what awaited him settled over his mind. His thoughts replayed the game's events. He knew this was where the true conflict began, the point where the people he cared for would suffer if he did nothing. Determination replaced hesitation. With a confident grin, he resolved to defy the original script and reshape the future himself. Nobleza Magic Academy stood proudly in the capital, renowned for producing elite magic users. New students gathered in the assembly hall, listening as the headmaster welcomed them. Among the crowd stood determined faces, each aware of the academy's fierce reputation and its role in shaping future leaders. Once orientation ended, students were informed about the grueling entrance exams. The atmosphere shifted as tension filled the room. Tests began with magical appraisals. One student's spell shattered the crystal, stunning everyone watching. Combat trials pushed students to their limits. A fire spell clashed against fierce sword strikes. Rivalries flared. Proud nobles refused to lose, but strength alone would determine success. In front of stunned classmates, Demonio cast an advanced level spell that instantly overwhelmed his opponent. Shock spread through the observers. None had expected such power from a newcomer. Whispers of his genius spread, yet his true strength exceeded every rumor. The entrance exam results were posted. Demonio ranked first, his name written above everyone else. Alone by the window, he celebrated joyfully. Raising his hand toward the sky, he called out to the people he cherished most, proudly announcing his achievement. Two women appeared through magical communication, his mentor and his mother. Their heartfelt praise filled the room with warmth. Far from the academy, Demonio's mother and mentor exchanged kind words. Each expressed hope and concern, ready to support him if hardship ever came his way. Alone once more, Demonio reflected on their kindness. Quietly, he resolved to work even harder and not waste their expectations. His placement in Class C brought slight disappointment, but it also marked the beginning of his mission. This signaled the official start of the story he had long anticipated. Nearby students complained about their rankings, visibly frustrated by their results. Hearing their complaints, Demonio remained silent, hiding his own thoughts while walking past them without a word. He later learned the academy's structure operated on merit. Classes were ranked from A to E, entirely based on academic and magical performance, setting the stage for fierce competition. The academy's strict hierarchy rewarded top performers with privileges, while weaker students were left with lesser facilities. Despite the freedom granted to students, Demonio avoided unnecessary schemes. In the game world he once knew, he had been an unmatched class elite, rather than invite trouble. He planned carefully, staying under the radar. He would still follow certain aspects of the original game's progression. His earlier performance had been intentionally restrained. Drawing too much attention would be dangerous, so he chose to appear as a normal elite instead of a prodigy. Though he held back, Demonio still claimed first place. A year had passed since his reincarnation, and his control over events had grown even stronger. Following relentless training, Demonio sensed his body unlocking hidden potential. Every strike and movement became faster and more precise. Despite his progress, he remained cautious. Rewriting the game's fate would require even greater power than he currently possessed. Whispers spread across the academy. Rumors circulated about a mysterious newcomer, an ordinary commoner unlike the usual elite students. Some had seen him at the exam venue. Though capable, his presence felt unsettling. His reputation grew quickly, though not entirely for the right reasons. One student dismissed him as weak. He was placed in E class, lacked magic, yet possessed remarkable swordsmanship. Headmistress Sagaro reviewed the student files, noting two exceptional newcomers. One was Demonio of the Trader family, the other, a magicless commoner with untapped potential. A confident instructor volunteered to handle both. With stern determination, she declared her intent to train them into obedient, rule-abiding students. Inside class, a Demonio's presence created tension. His reputation came before him, sparking nervous speculation and exaggerated rumors among classmates who feared his cold expression and unknown past. Despite the anxiety, others were curious. Female students approached him enthusiastically, eager to study together. Some even admitted they had admired him for a long time. Observing the shift, his floating companion commented on the dual nature of attention. Fear created distance, but admiration brought people closer with different intentions. Demonio's emotionless reaction drew attention. His blank expression remained unreadable, leaving others unsure whether he cared at all. Girls nearby hesitated under his gaze, or lack of it. Misreading his indifference, they quietly returned to their seats. The imposing teacher introduced herself as Gloria. She wasn't only the homeroom instructor, she also served as the year head, commanding instant authority. Her reputation came before her. Known for strict discipline and tremendous strength, she held dual roles as professor and knight, earning both admiration and fear. Despite rarely appearing in the original game, Gloria had a loyal fanbase. In this world, Demonio now stood directly under her supervision, making her role far more significant. Gloria lectured about magical aptitude, emphasizing that noble lineage often brought natural talent. But talent alone meant nothing without dedication. With thunderous authority, she declared that every student must rise beyond their limits. Weakness wouldn't be tolerated, and arrogance would be crushed without hesitation. Her roar silenced the classroom instantly. Students straightened their backs in fear as she demanded complete obedience. No one dared challenge her authority, disappointed by their timid reactions. Gloria questioned the value of nobility. Even a fraction of her magic had overwhelmed them. She considered them unimpressive. Yet one presence caught her attention. Demonio's piercing gaze locked onto her, shaking her confidence. In that moment, she realized she couldn't judge this class by appearances alone. Gloria misinterpreted Demonio's silent gaze as defiance. Furious, she believed he was mocking her ability as an educator. Still amused, Demonio casually answered with a smile. His light-hearted remark only strengthened her determination to discipline him properly. Later, while walking through the halls, Demonio reflected on the academy's layout. Despite knowing the game's structure, much of the school remained unfamiliar to him in this world. As he looked around, he admitted that many students were unfamiliar to him. The game had only highlighted key characters, leaving much of the world unexplored. Over lunch, he casually observed his classmates. Tina, a student from the Elf Nation, and Sakura, from the Eastern Islands, caught his attention. Demonio remembered the two girls were game heroines with explicit scenes, but he had always skipped those. At the cafeteria, a girl was mocked by arrogant students for being E-rank and sitting in the center. He recognized her as Rebecca, a major heroine in the game's original story. Her appearance stirred an unexpected memory. Just then, another figure appeared, blonde, calm, and confrontational. Demonio recognized him instantly as the game's protagonist and prepared himself for the inevitable clash. Ray Brave finally appeared at the academy, his presence immediately noticed by Demonio watching from above. Recognized as the original game's protagonist, Ray carried an air of confidence. Demonio quietly acknowledged his role and importance. With irritation, Demonio voiced his disdain, labeling Ray as both a threat and a troublesome figure with questionable preferences. Meanwhile, Ray faced ridicule from upper-ranked nobles. Despite their taunts about his class and lack of magic, he stood firm against their insults. Although viewed as a powerless peasant, Ray possessed great potential in the game. He relied solely on swordsmanship, something that remained true in this reality. Ray declared his determination to rise through the academy without magic. His passion stirred reactions, but Demonio stayed doubtful. Despite Ray's underdog speech, the truth was different. He came from a powerful bloodline and would eventually awaken exclusive ancient magic. In the game's original story, Demonio suffered a humiliating defeat against Ray. That loss marked the start of his downfall, ending in a tragic death. Knowing this, Demonio considered building a positive relationship with Ray. Aligning with the protagonist could ensure his survival and provide support in future battles. However, conflicting emotions clouded that decision. Memories of the game and lingering resentment kept him from accepting Ray. Forgiveness did not come easily. Late at night, a virtual heroine on the screen expressed her loneliness, reaching deep into the heart of her viewer. Faced with a pivotal choice in the game, he hesitated. The options remained on screen, one urging him to leave, the other to stay. In the end, fear prevailed. Worried about real-world consequences, he backed away from the fantasy and shut the program down, muttering in regret as he stood and left. Meanwhile, Demonio walked alone through the academy halls. He tried to free himself from the emotional spiral triggered by his recent encounters. Ray confronted a group of students and quickly overwhelmed them. One girl approached him, praising his strength. Demonio suddenly froze, sensing a surge of bloodlust directed straight at him. Elsewhere, the scenario continued unfolding exactly as the game had predicted. The protagonist began forming deeper bonds with the girls, following the scripted route. Back in the classroom, a confident instructor presented a challenge to her students, demanding an answer to a difficult magic incantation. Without hesitation, Demonio raised his hand and gave the correct answer. His serious expression stunned the other students, who never expected such discipline from him. The instructor stood impressed. Demonio had memorized everything perfectly, even behaving like the model student. Demonio cheerfully declared his love for Gloria's lessons, trying to appear as the perfect student. Later, he gazed out the window, contemplating his position. Straying too far from the game's original route might make his past knowledge worthless, and that risk troubled him. Not far away, Carol and Mina were cornered by upperclassmen. Greg, one of the seniors, cornered Carol with a smug grin. His threats were subtle yet menacing, making it clear that resisting him would lead to expulsion. From a distance, Demonio watched silently. Though hesitant at first, he couldn't ignore the situation. As classmates, Carol and Mina deserved protection, and he was the only one nearby who could act, with determination burning in his eyes. Demonio rushed forward, declaring his desire to make his mothers proud. His sudden appearance stunned both the aggressors and the girl they were harassing. Recognition spread quickly. The upperclassmen grew uneasy upon realizing who he was, the top first-year student from the infamous trader family. Though his presence was intimidating, Demonio remained calm. The older students tried to downplay their fear, reassuring one another while quietly backing away. Demonio addressed them politely, apologizing as a formality. Deep down, however, he remembered the game's version of his character, one who mercilessly crushed anyone who dared provoke him. Standing before the upperclassmen, Demonio bowed respectfully. He acknowledged the girls as his classmates and offered to take responsibility in their place. Despite their arrogance, he remained calm. Internally, he was determined not to become an arrogant villain. That display of humility was mocked. Seizing the opportunity, the older student attacked, kicking Demonio without warning. Bruised and lying on the ground, he endured their mockery. They mistook submission for weakness and belittled him, hurling insults about his background and family. But their final insult crossed the line. Rage exploded within Demonio. In one swift motion, he struck back, channeling his fury into a powerful counterattack that shattered their smug expressions. Demonio gripped the senior tightly, overwhelming him with sheer force. The power he unleashed shocked everyone, including his opponent. That night, he returned home to a familiar place. One of his mothers invited him to sleep beside her, insisting it was natural for a son to do so. Flustered but obedient, he lay down. Her peaceful breathing filled the room as she quickly drifted asleep. In his sleep, she shifted, moving closer. The unintended contact startled him. Struggling with his thoughts, he pulled away and sat at the edge of the bed, determined to resist temptation. He clenched his fists and reminded himself that her love was maternal, not to be misunderstood. With a surge of emotion, Demonio delivered a devastating blow. The force of his punch sent the senior flying across the yard, finally releasing the frustration he had long suppressed. As the defeated group staggered away, Demonio made one thing clear: his mother's affection was sacred. Surprisingly, Carol and Mina clung to him affectionately. Their actions confused him, as neither girl existed in the original game. This unexpected development left him unsure how to react. Rumors spread rapidly. Students whispered about Demonio defeating Greg, the third-year student ranked number 3. Whispers twisted the truth, turning his declaration of maternal respect into something entirely different. News of Demonio's actions spread quickly, raising concerns among the faculty. Some even questioned whether he intended to dominate the academy. Despite his intentions, Demonio found himself labeled a troublemaker once again. However, Carol and Mina had already explained everything. Gloria listened and acknowledged that his actions were driven by self-defense rather than malice. Though she understood the situation, she couldn't overlook the chaos he had caused. As punishment, she ordered him to run 20 laps, both as discipline and as a public example. Yet behind her stern expression, she recognized his sincerity. Impressed by his honesty, Gloria admitted she had misjudged him and offered a small smile of approval. Gloria gently acknowledged Demonio's efforts, patting his head. Despite his reputation, she never viewed him as a rogue. Unlike the rest of the staff, who treated him like a danger, Gloria addressed him like any other student. Her consistency reflected how she behaved in the game. She balanced discipline with compassion. Her fair treatment earned his respect, and Demonio silently vowed never to disappoint her. When danger loomed, he remembered the fate she suffered in the original game. Determined, he refused to let her face that ending again. 1 month into the school year, students gathered before the dungeon entrance for their first major trial. Before departure, the instructor stressed caution. Despite being a lower-level dungeon, she warned that underestimating the dangers could become fatal in real combat situations. This expedition was mandatory for lower-class students as part of their curriculum. Upper-class students, however, could participate voluntarily, creating a clear difference in obligation. Among the crowd, one figure stood out. Demonio, a black-haired student from Class A, chose to enter alone. Although the challenge was meant for groups, Demonio accepted the solo task without hesitation. Demonio yawned, seemingly unconcerned, yet his presence puzzled the others. His true reason remained hidden. In the original game, Mama Gloria was destined to die during this very extracurricular class, while others treated it as routine training. Demonio stayed alert. He fought fiercely, eliminating beasts with precision while keeping watch over the unfolding events. The first day passed peacefully, as night fell. The students rested inside the dungeon. Later that night, she revealed something personal to the group. Gloria was a mother, and her daughter, Gelda, was about to turn 6. Her warmth softened the atmosphere, but Demonio remained vigilant, determined to change the tragic fate once written for her. Gloria smiled softly as she described her daughter, calling her kind, sweet, and completely unlike herself. Her voice carried pride, along with quiet regret. Overwhelmed by work, she rarely returned home. She admitted relying too much on servants and planned to take time off to focus on being a proper mother. Watching everyone relax, Gloria reminded herself of promises she had made. She wanted to take her daughter to the market and a play, things that once seemed trivial but now weighed heavily on her heart. Nearby, a student felt a chill, though nothing had happened yet. Anxiety crept in. A vague fear lingered. Something about Gloria's words felt too final. To Demonio, everything felt painfully familiar. Every one of Gloria's lines echoed the scripted death flags from the game. Family dreams, one final break, a heartfelt promise. All classic signs of an approaching tragedy he had no intention of letting repeat. Trouble approached exactly as predicted. The enemy organization, targeting heroines with special bloodlines, prepared to strike. When the attack began, she took command. Sword in hand, she charged forward alone, determined to protect her students even at the cost of her own life. In the original game, this moment marked her end. Her death led to a tearful funeral where her daughter Gelda sobbed, calling out for a mother who would never return. Demonio strengthened his resolve. He refused to let this scripted tragedy happen again. Although he had considered avoiding the class to stay safe, doing so would leave him blind to the enemy's movements. The students discovered a hot spring facility inside the dungeon, unexpectedly maintained by the academy for training purposes. As they prepared to enter, warnings spread between the groups. Concerns about the unstable walls increased the tension, especially among the girls. Demonio suddenly remembered a scripted game event on this exact night. The wall between the baths would collapse, causing complete chaos. Worried about the outcome, he rushed away, desperate to avoid the accidental encounter. Getting caught in that event would completely derail his plans. After a brief search, he found another spring away from the main site. Isolated and peaceful, it offered the perfect place to bathe safely, away from the others and the looming event he wanted to avoid. While relaxing in the secluded hot spring, Demonio noticed a figure through the mist. Something felt wrong. To his surprise, the person bathing nearby was none other than Mama Gloria herself. The situation escalated immediately. Panic overtook him. He turned and ran in embarrassment as Gloria screamed, her dignity shaken by the unexpected encounter. She couldn't understand how a student had ended up in the same spring. Her expression blended confusion with disbelief. Flustered, Demonio apologized, claiming he hadn't known she was there. The entire incident veered dangerously off script, adding another risk to his mission of keeping her alive. Gloria regained her composure and stepped closer. She declared it was fine. A veteran like her wouldn't be shaken by a student seeing her naked. Demonio, though calm on the surface, immediately realized she was embarrassed but too proud to admit it openly. She started explaining how her body used to be more toned, blaming her current softness on overwork and missed training. He listened quietly, amused by her excuses. No one had asked, yet she nervously kept explaining herself. To him, it was strangely endearing. Eventually, she laughed softly and teased him. Fate had paired her, a supposedly old demon professor, as his bath companion, joking that he had drawn the short straw. Gloria sat quietly, expressing her self-doubt. She believed her students saw her as boring, preferring younger women instead. Unexpectedly, Demonio rejected that idea. He hurried toward her, calling her a wonderful teacher, far more captivating than anyone else. Without hesitation, he admitted his feelings. He declared he genuinely wanted to see her body, not because of an accident, but because of his own desire. Tears gathered in his eyes. In the original game, there had never been such emotional moments, and this felt like a dream fulfilled. Startled by his honesty, Gloria froze. Her voice trembled as she tried to answer, overwhelmed by his direct confession and her own conflicted emotions. Thunder echoed in the distance. Gloria, flustered as she retreated, scolded Demonio for his earlier remarks before leaving the hot spring. Alone again, Demonio called after her, reaffirming his respect and admiration. Her silence lingered even after she had dressed. Despite her stern expression, Gloria couldn't ignore the strange aura surrounding that student. Something about him deeply unsettled her. Elsewhere, in the dungeon's lower depths, a cloaked figure sensed activity. They concealed their presence but still detected movement. One individual stood out. The masked enemy realized the mana signature felt familiar. A troubling possibility formed in their mind. It might be the same person from the legendary Witch of Lightning incident, suggesting a far greater threat than expected. Suddenly, the cloaked enemy made their move. A massive magic circle appeared as they began carrying out a revised plan, forcing nearby students into defensive positions. An earthquake followed. From the collapsing rock, a monstrous hydra burst out, terrifying the nearby group. Panic spread rapidly. Gloria rushed into view, her eyes widening in disbelief. The creature before them was no ordinary threat. It was a hydra, a monster far too powerful for this dungeon level. She questioned how such a legendary monster had been summoned inside a training zone under Academy supervision. The implications were deeply disturbing. Meanwhile, one of the students drew his sword with trembling hands. Despite his courage, the Hydra's overwhelming presence left most of them frozen as the beast charged forward. The small companion splashed frantically, trying to awaken Demonio. Alarms echoed in the distance as chaos erupted elsewhere. A massive two-headed serpent burst into the cavern, sending terrified students fleeing in every direction. While the others retreated, one boy charged ahead. Gripping his sword tightly, he rushed toward the monster without hesitation, eyes fixed on the threat before him. Leaping high, he slammed his blade onto the serpent's skull. The impact echoed loudly, yet the creature didn't flinch, its scales resisting the blow with unnatural toughness. Despite his efforts, the sword barely pierced its hide. Watching from nearby, students cowered behind rocks, fear replacing their hope. From the smoke, a woman stepped forward, wand in hand, her commanding presence unmistakable. With a single attack, she stopped the beast. Gloria's firm command silenced every protest. With her back turned, she left the boy no choice but to obey. A torrent of flames burst from her staff, engulfing the tunnel with overwhelming force. Her magic blazed brightly and relentlessly. Determined to face the threat alone, she steadied her stance. No hesitation remained as her weapon glowed with power. Elsewhere, Demonio sprinted through the halls, frustrated by his delayed arrival. His companion floated beside him, exchanging banter during the rush. Reaching the scene, he froze. The situation differed from his expectations. According to the game's scenario, this attack shouldn't have begun yet. Students fled through the cavern tunnel, following Mama Gloria's orders. Among them, the boy recognized the timeline unfolding exactly as the plot had outlined. He admitted his current weakness but placed his trust in Gloria's strength. Beside him, a girl clung to hope, remembering Gloria's past as a top knight. In the game, this was Gloria's death scene, her sacrifice buying time for everyone else to survive. Her death served only as narrative fuel for the hero's development, a supporting character written to die, remembered solely through the impact of her final act. Meanwhile, Demonio cursed the delay. He realized that the ideal awakening should have happened during Gloria's battle, not afterward. The twin-headed serpent emerged from the cavern with its fangs bared, but Demonio stood in its path without moving. He acknowledged the monster's strength but never wavered. Drawing his blade, he remembered the brutal training that had forged him. A coordinated assault followed. Demonio unleashed a sharp slash, while Gloria struck with precision, both aiming deadly blows at the beast. Their combined attack tore the earth apart. In the aftermath, Gloria rested peacefully beside Demonio, their bond clearly strengthened through their shared survival. In that quiet moment, her shy smile met his flustered gaze. The danger had passed, but something new had begun to blossom. In the stillness of the night, the two found themselves alone. Warmth and closeness replaced the earlier chaos, deepening their bond beyond words. Moments later, Gloria appeared noticeably radiant, her expression soft and confident. Meanwhile, a nearby spirit reacted with exaggerated shock and flustered amazement. Afterward, she bowed her head sincerely, showing both humility and care. Her gesture suggested something more heartfelt than simple affection. Elsewhere, Demonio resumed the fight with unwavering determination. His resolve burned brightly as he declared the results of his training. Beside him, the floating spirit warned him about overexerting himself, especially after the recent intense activities. Demonio raced through the tunnel, urgency filling every step. Overhead, his companion commented on the lingering effects of the potion still affecting Gloria. Facing the multi-headed Hydra alone, Gloria stood breathless but unyielding. Her grip tightened around her weapon as the towering beast drew closer. Despite countless strikes, her attacks barely left a mark. She had sealed the cave's exit to ensure no one could return. Though exhausted, she knew collapsing wasn't an option, not yet. A single minute, even a single second, was all she needed to buy. Gloria hurled herself at the monster again, determined to stall it long enough for her students to escape. A powerful blow hurled Gloria into the cavern wall. Dust erupted around her as the Hydra advanced. Wounded and exhausted, she collapsed onto the ground. Her thoughts faded as her body failed her, whispering quiet resignation. Lying motionless, she clutched the earth and prayed her students had escaped safely. Even the one who often caused trouble remained in her thoughts. A fallen trinket rested nearby, displaying the smiling face of a young girl. Memories returned. A loveless marriage arranged by their families. Her husband, long gone, had left them with nothing but debt and a child. In the loneliness that followed, her daughter became her anchor, the one reason she continued fighting. Late into the night, Gloria worked tirelessly. In exchange for relief from her debts, she served both the academy and the knights. Though responsibilities weighed heavily on her, teaching brought genuine fulfillment. The classroom became the place where she found purpose. One day, trouble arose at work. Gloria, preparing to leave, once again entrusted her daughter to the care of others. Behind her brave expression, tears gathered in her eyes, revealing how often she had accepted being second to duty. Lying broken on the ground, Gloria reached toward the trinket that had slipped from her grasp. She thought about the opportunities she had missed. Moments she never embraced. Words she never spoke. Times she would never recover. Clutching the keepsake against her chest, she trembled. Apologies poured out, not for losing the battle, but for neglecting what truly mattered. The Hydra loomed once again, fangs bared. It lunged forward. Yet she never flinched, choosing to embrace everything she had lost. A sudden surge of dark magic exploded between them. Binding tendrils wrapped around the beast in a violent snare. From the shadows came salvation, an unexpected reprieve through an overwhelming spell, prison of darkness. Gloria froze at the unexpected voice, her eyes widening at the words that shattered her despair. A dark silhouette emerged, promising to save her. Shadows rose, surrounding her with a protective force. With his sword drawn, Demonio stood before her. Allies gathered behind him, ready to turn the tide. Demonio confronted the towering multi-headed beast without flinching. As others recoiled, he moved forward, unwavering. Watching in disbelief, a woman realized the truth. That spell too advanced for a student had originated from him. Such immense power wasn't ordinary. Only elite knights were capable of attaining that level. Far beyond the norm, Demonio appeared again, instantly, his figure emerging from the shadows. Teleportation like that shouldn't have been possible for someone of his rank. Confusion spread among the others as they struggled to understand the situation. Calmly observing the scene, Demonio recognized the setup. The route had been sealed earlier thanks to his preparation. A companion followed behind him, impressed by his foresight. The night before, Demonio had slipped into the dungeon and placed teleportation circles in secret. A hidden mark glowed faintly on the woman's shoulder. Without her realizing it, he had quietly embedded teleportation coordinates onto her skin. He understood the risks. If the enemy uncovered the setup, their ambush could have happened even sooner. Suddenly, the enemy unleashed a fierce beam of magical energy. Demonio stood prepared, his blade raised as the light surged toward him. The explosion burst forth with tremendous force. Shrapnel and shockwaves ripped through the air. Just in time, one ally threw herself at Demonio, pushing him away from the blast's epicenter. The monstrous Hydra towered in the distance, its heads lifted as the cliffside started to tremble violently. Demonio readied himself, black energy swirling around him. His expression hardened. This monster wasn't part of the original scenario. Despite the chaos, his attention remained on her safety. His enchanted coat unraveled, wrapping protectively around the woman behind him. He didn't hesitate to protect her instead of himself. Realizing the seriousness of the threat, she begged him to leave. Alone, he might escape. She was injured, slowing both of them down. Turning away from the exit, Demonio refused her plea. He stepped closer with determination, unwilling to abandon her. Demonio extended his coat toward the wounded woman, recognizing the sacrifice she had made for her students. His words struck her deeply. She had risked everything, and now someone acknowledged the weight of her actions. Without hesitation, he discarded the remains of his coat, his determination evident in every movement. Standing firm, he declared his resolve. His goal was no longer survival, it was her protection. Facing the towering Hydra, Demonio stepped ahead. Power surged as his restraints started to break, and his true strength awakened. Demonio lifted his blade, channeling power through his body. Behind him, the woman warned him of the risks, but he pressed on, unfazed by the danger. Dark tendrils coiled around his arm, and the enemy reacted too late. Energy surged violently, disturbing even the monster. From afar, she sensed the change. The raw magic flowing from him felt monstrous and unnatural more than simple overflow. His mana compressed rapidly, sharpening into deadly force. He advanced with precision, declaring vengeance for Mama Gloria as the creature became trapped in his spell. Focused and unwavering, he clenched his fist. With his target secured, Demonio prepared for a decisive strike, one he wouldn't miss. Demonio unleashed his new technique, a perfected version of the Prison of Darkness, now transformed into Shredder. The dust settled. Demonio remained still, muscles tense, as fragments of rock floated around him, remnants of his unleashed power. From a distance, she watched in amazement. He had not only mastered an advanced spell, but evolved it during battle. Logic couldn't explain what she had just witnessed. While another cloaked figure watched silently, Demonio calmly approached the remains. He decided to burn the monster's parts to prevent any regeneration. As flames roared, the cloaked observer whispered. Demonio's power was undeniable, but whether he would become a friend or threat remained uncertain. The hooded figure turned away, determined to report the incident. Everything he did, he claimed, served the progenitor mother. Not long afterward, the night unit arrived at the site. Gloria and Demonio were safe, their battle finished. Several days later, the Magic Academy's festival continued. In the background, the Academy and the Order launched an investigation into the attack. Gloria, fully recovered, visited Demonio personally. Without hesitation, she expressed her gratitude with an emotional embrace. During their peaceful tea, she admitted the truth. The plan had called for a team effort, yet he had defeated the Hydra alone. Demonio calmly reassured her that the result was enough. Everyone was safe, and to him, that was all that mattered. Her thoughts returned to the moment she held her daughter. The warmth of that embrace reminded her of what truly mattered. Tears filled her eyes. She had come far too close to leaving her child alone. Surviving felt like a miracle. Grateful yet overwhelmed, she stumbled over her words, determined to offer some kind of thanks, though unsure how. Demonio made a simple request. He wished to keep seeing her as she was now alive, safe, and smiling. Relief swept over Demonio. He had prevented the grim fate awaiting Mama Gloria. From then on, she'd remain a trusted presence in his life. Gloria's expression changed in surprise. She hadn't expected his request to be so genuine or so direct. The memory of their earlier encounter returned. His words had been impulsive, but his feelings weren't concealed. Still, she wondered why anyone would see value in her now, as she was, though embarrassed. She accepted his sincerity. Out of respect for the one who saved her, she agreed to honor his request, however unusual it seemed. With a teacher's intuition, she answered, not with resistance, but with quiet understanding. Her actions were no longer about obligation, but trust, given to someone who saw her differently than the world did. Gloria, caught between duty and embarrassment, steadied herself. Her expression showed both reluctance and determination as she tried to follow through with what she believed was expected. The silence unsettled her. She misunderstood his hesitation as disappointment and questioned if he wanted something even more forward, forcing herself to face that fear directly. Demonio stood conflicted, visibly embarrassed. The situation had spiraled, and though he tried to remain composed, her words broke through his defenses. Overwhelmed, he excused himself. Meanwhile, from outside, a grateful voice rang out, a humorous contrast to the tension indoors. Far away, at the academy, the headmistress examined the situation through a report. She confirmed future arrangements, already relying on Demonio's involvement in the coming weeks. She accepted the responsibility with confidence, seeing it as an opportunity to support the academy directly. Though her expression softened, curiosity remained. The headmistress, amused, reflected on how far she'd come. Declaring herself a responsible adult, she affirmed her position. Her tone blended pride with a touch of self-awareness. A powerful sorceress, amused and intrigued, remarked on the unexpected decision to take on a disciple. Elsewhere, a graceful noblewoman reflected on her reasons for supporting the academy. At Noblesse Magic Academy, whispers spread about a student named Ray, known as a powerless E-class peasant. His reputation was anything but impressive in a school that valued magic above all. Yet, memories of a recent dungeon attack told a different story. Ray, despite lacking magic, led the charge to evacuate fellow students, confronting danger without hesitation. During the chaos, Ray defeated monsters blocking the escape route. Thanks to his efforts, everyone escaped unharmed, his courage reshaping the narrative whispered behind his back. Ray's growing reputation spread rapidly through the academy. Praise followed his recent bravery, and admiration increased among his peers. Unlike ordinary threats, these slimes targeted only the fibers of clothing. Female students found themselves in danger, with the creatures approaching in a disturbingly specific pattern. Within moments, uniforms started to dissolve. Panic spread as several girls were left half, exposed, desperately trying to cover themselves while surrounded by aggressive slimes. The situation worsened as clothing disappeared completely. Embarrassed and defenseless, the girls cried out for help. Calmly entering the scene, Demonio took charge. With composed authority, he covered the girls with magical shadows and scolded the public exposure. His chivalrous actions left a lasting impression. While Demonio rested at the balcony, students nearby praised his recent actions. Rumors about his transformation spread quickly. Once viewed with suspicion, his efforts during the dungeon incident in cooperation with Miss Gloria began to shift public opinion in his favor. At the academy courtyard, students gathered for a special lesson. Gloria, having returned from her break and escaped her game, determined death, stood proudly as the guest instructor. Soon afterward, another respected figure arrived. Lady Mafayana, a renowned member of the Seven Magia, introduced herself to the class. As the two powerful women stood before the crowd, Demonio watched quietly. His gaze lingered with subtle curiosity, while Lady Mafayana returned it with quiet recognition. Overcome with emotion, Demonio found himself in disbelief. The events unfolding before him had never happened in the game. For the first time, joy overcame logic, leaving him flustered and thrilled. Lady Mafayana, unfazed by the attention, warned the class about the challenge ahead. Her playful yet intense demeanor suggested no one would be spared during training. With confidence, she demonstrated the correct way to harness powerful magic. Her instructions, though technically sound, lacked clarity. The lesson became more intense. Students were ordered into one-on-one duels, with fists and spells flying. Watching from the sidelines, Demonio and Deathpenna exchanged thoughts telepathically. Despite her experience, Mafayana's teaching left much to be desired. Gloria's demanding training left students shaken. Despite her strength and confidence, her approach overwhelmed those unfamiliar with raw combat. As rumors spread, Demonio's strength became a subject of curiosity. A fellow student learned from the headmistress that he had once trained under Mafayana, explaining his abnormal skills. Later, Gloria shared a quiet moment with her daughter. Although their time together was peaceful, her affection had clearly grown stronger. When asked about her break, Gloria answered warmly. Yet, she quickly changed the subject, hinting at something more personal between her and Demonio. In a gentle voice, she reminded him of their private bond. Flustered, he responded with the title she preferred, Mama Gloria. Gloria quickly regained her focus. Reminding Demonio there was no time for distractions. Inside the lounge, Demonio immediately sensed tension. Mafayana stood across from a white-haired youth, Goldorn, the game's main protagonist. As the scene shifted, an unmistakable aura filled the next room. The familiar scent of a pipe accompanied a quiet presence. The powerful witch greeted him calmly. Her words broke the silence as she addressed him directly. Demonio Trador. Before the shock could settle, an excited figure burst in, floating in angelic delight. With a glowing halo, the strange chibi, like being called out happily, recognizing the woman as Granny Sagaro. Sagaro Shellheis, the headmistress of Noblessa Academy, stood as a powerful figure cloaked in magic. Despite her limited role in the original game, Sagaro was popular among certain players, especially Demonio. Now, seated before her, he remained unusually focused while telepathically speaking with Deathpenna about his preferences. With everyone gathered, the headmistress turned the discussion to serious matters. Goldorn and Demonio were recognized for their heroism. One led the student evacuation while the other helped defeat the Hydra alongside Gloria. Gratitude followed. Sagaro sincerely thanked them both for their bravery. Because of their efforts, not a single life had been lost during the incident. Sagaro shifted the conversation toward the investigation. A possible lead had surfaced regarding the mastermind behind the recent attack. A name, Alta Mater, she explained further. Alta Mater was not just a name, but the title of a growing criminal organization that had become increasingly dangerous in recent years. One of their leaders, known by witnesses as the Man in the Iron Mask, had previously clashed with Mafayana. Despite their growing presence, the organization remained surrounded by mystery. The little information gathered so far was fragmented and limited, keeping their motives unclear. What they did know was chilling. Alta Mater was led by a figure known as Mother, worshipped by its followers. Goldorn remained determined. The academy would not allow those responsible for attacking students to escape justice. Sagaro revealed the truth behind Mafayana's return. Her appointment as instructor was only a cover. She had been summoned to investigate the incident secretly. While Mafayana had planned to teach seriously, Sagaro saw through her. Her teaching flaws aside, Sagaro asked them to keep her secret mission confidential. Doubt arose. If the mission was so important, why leave it in their hands? Sagaro answered simply she didn't want to create unnecessary panic by acting openly. Finally, Sagaro smiled with quiet confidence. She entrusted the task to them not out of convenience. As they left the meeting room, Goldorn looked ahead. He told Demonio that he'd be relying on his help moving forward, trusting him despite everything that had changed. Demonio reflected on the differences between the game and reality. He never expected Goldorn, the game's protagonist, to approach him with respect instead of contempt. With determined eyes, Goldorn extended his hand. He vowed to become stronger and catch up to Demonio, striving to reach greater heights as a student of the academy. This moment existed in the game as well, but only as a turning point after Demonio's fall from grace. Now, imagining how things could have gone. Demonio pictured a darker version of Goldorn, one with a twisted obsession. Demonio's old habits resurfaced. As if driven by reflex, he spat out the same cruel line from the game, rejecting Goldorn with harsh arrogance. The bitterness remained unmistakable. Instant regret followed. Deathpenna scolded him mentally, while Goldorn stood silently. Despite the insult, Goldorn remained composed, inspired rather than discouraged. He silently vowed to push himself even harder. Back in the office, Sagaro sighed over the complications piling up. Between internal schemes and external threats, the burden on the academy continued to grow. Gloria and Mafia exchanged firm words. While foreign enemies posed danger, they reminded each other that threats from within among powerful nobles could not be ignored either. At Noblessa Academy, many students came from prestigious bloodlines. As a result, their parents were often powerful, eccentric figures whose influence reached far beyond the school walls. Sagaro casually mentioned one such guardian who had already made a troublesome request, far across the continent. In a quiet elven village, a figure waited patiently, surrounded by forest and silence. Her presence hinted at deeper involvement in the academy's affairs. Lady Tierra stood among her people, speaking softly. The village's gate to the capital hadn't been used in ages, but it would soon be restored. Urgency had returned. Her true objective was clear. Once the gate reopened, she planned to travel to the academy. In a peaceful forest clearing, Lady Tierra sat gracefully, surrounded by birds. Her calm presence concealed a deeper, unspoken resolve. With shadowed eyes, she quietly whispered a single word, marking the beginning of her hidden intentions. In the capital, a tall and elegant elf woman walked swiftly through the streets. Her graceful figure turned heads as she hurried with purpose, followed closely by a worried young man. Elsewhere, Demonio stood confidently, armed and dressed in a high-grade magic coat. After a long absence, Demonio finally returned home. He sat across from a smiling woman, whose presence felt calming and warm. Between sips, she mentioned how long it had been since their last peaceful conversation. These gates, rare teleportation devices, were normally restricted. Yet, as the academy's top student, Demonio had earned a privilege, one he intended to use to stay close to the one who mattered most. She praised Demonio's accomplishments with a gentle smile, calling him brilliant and popular. Despite the compliments, her voice carried a trace of concern, touched by how much effort he was putting into the academy. Though proud of his growth, she admitted she worried he might return home with a girlfriend. Contrary to her expectations, he brought home not a sweetheart, but two mature women. The two women sincerely explained themselves. Both were his teachers, devoted to their role. As laughter filled the garden, she proudly declared her love for Demonio. Surrounded by warmth, he sat quietly, deeply cherished by every woman present. Demonio remained composed, but the tension around him was unmistakable. Despite the calm exterior, the atmosphere made even Penna uneasy. He proudly referred to them as mom friends, leaving Penna more confused than ever. Though unsure what he meant, Demonio seemed satisfied knowing everyone got along. Later that evening, the group shared a lively dinner together. Laughter echoed throughout the house. Meanwhile, the older women enjoyed a relaxing bath, exchanging quiet smiles in each other's company. While Demonio rested in his room, someone quietly approached the door. Her footsteps were soft, yet filled with hesitation. Manana's, conflicted and flustered, stood outside. Her heart pounded as she questioned her intentions. She paused before Demonio's door, her hand trembling on the knob. She whispered to herself that this time would be the last, as if trying to convince her heart. Just as she turned it, another hand caught hers. Gloria appeared, equally startled. Their exchange intensified as each criticized the other's intentions. Gloria reminded Manana that her child wasn't even home, suggesting she return immediately. Rosa, wearing an even more daring outfit, interrupted the argument. She calmly informed them that Demonio had already left the room, making their efforts pointless. Outside in the courtyard, beneath the moonlight, Gloria confronted Rosa. Suspicion lingered in her voice as she questioned Rosa's appearance and why she was dressed like that. Under the moonlit sky, Demonio stood calmly atop a tree, his coat billowing with power below. A masked intruder crept through the garden. Thanks to a magical barrier he had placed around the mansion, no movement escaped his notice. With a simple command, Demonio fired an earth lance spell toward the enemy. The masked man panicked, calling his name in disbelief while scrambling to cast a defensive spell. But Demonio had vanished from sight. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared, leaving the attacker confused and shaken. Before the intruder could react, a cold blade rested against his neck. Demonio appeared behind him. Demonio quickly concluded the intruder was nothing more than a low-ranked lackey. He recalled how, even in the original game world, there had been rumors about his darkness potential. Clearly, someone had been observing him since the Hydra incident, tracking his actions with unsettling precision. With narrowed eyes, Demonio concluded that this scout was part of an early probing attempt before a larger assault. Despite the tension, the man began to tremble. Demonio coldly declared he had no interest in negotiating with bandits until something caught his attention. The moment he heard the name Rosa, Demonio's expression darkened. Hatred surged as he called her a parasite. Wearing a terrifying magical disguise, Demonio gave the intruder one final command: take Rosa and disappear. The bandit fled in fear as Demonio laughed menacingly. From the shadows, Penna watched the scene unfold. She soon realized Demonio's actions were deliberate, a tactic to mislead any observers into believing he hated Rosa. He was manipulating perceptions for her safety. The weight of his own words finally caught up with him. Tearfully, he collapsed to the ground, overwhelmed with guilt for insulting someone he had sworn to protect. Later that night, Demonio lay in bed, exhausted. Watching over him quietly, the women agreed to let him rest, grateful. As Demonio slept peacefully, a large portrait of Rosa and his younger self hung on the wall, watching his sleeping face. The girl paused. Her gaze softened as she stepped closer. Demonio remained unaware, his expression relaxed and unguarded in his sleep. A faint smirk appeared on her lips. She muttered that his sleeping face was the only cute thing about him, hinting at affection beneath her cold demeanor. Morning arrived too soon. Back on the academy grounds, Demonio sighed in disappointment. Lost in thought, he turned a corner only to collide face first into a woman's chest. Embarrassed, he apologized at once, unaware that another unexpected encounter had just begun. After bumping into her, Demonio looked up and saw a towering elf woman with a gentle face. She quickly checked him over, her hands lightly patting his arms. Seeing he wasn't hurt, she smiled with relief and praised him as a strong boy. Before leaving, she answered her companions, calling her Lady Tiara. With a warm smile, she assured them she would join them soon, even as one of the men shyly insisted he was turning 50. Tiara affectionately called him a good boy. Watching from a distance, Demonio froze. A feeling of certainty struck him, his heart stirred with recognition, and in his mind a voice echoed. It's Mama Tiara, I'm sure of it now. Tiara Ellen, an elf over 100 years old and standing well over 2 meters tall, stood beside her daughter. As the village elder and mother of a heroine, her presence was overwhelming in every way. Though only a side character in the game, she had gained unexpected popularity among a niche group of players. Among them, Demonio was the most devoted admirer. Seeing her arrive at the academy awakened Demonio's awareness. He realized that something significant was beginning, far more than just a casual visit. The long-awaited Elven Elf arc was finally beginning, marked by Tiara's graceful yet powerful entrance. Ray stood firm, raising a glowing shield as the monstrous bird charged. Light surged forward, colliding with the beast's attack. Hidden in the shadows, a knight watched the scene unfold. His expression hardened upon witnessing the shield's magic. Meanwhile, Ray's classmates looked on in shock. None had expected him to wield such power. Later, at the edge of a shattered cave wall, Ray gazed at his hands in awe. Inside the academy library, 2 students studied ancient tomes. They speculated about Ray's unique abilities. Tina's voice became solemn as she recalled a legend from her elven village. It spoke of a warrior who once wielded similar magic in an ancient war. From a distance, Demonio watched the events unfold just as the story had once foretold. Tears filled Tina's eyes as she revealed the sudden arrival of her mother at the academy. In the headmistress's office, Tina quietly confessed her wish to remain at the academy. Determination mixed with fear as she questioned whether she had the strength to defy her mother's will. 3 imposing figures stood before them, their presence dominating the room. Each carried authority and experience, radiating silent pressure. Introduced as Tiara Ellen Forrest, she was no ordinary visitor. The ruler of the elven race and mother of Tina, she held influence across nations. Tiara's overwhelming aura filled the room, leaving even the headmistress visibly uneasy. Her size and presence alone demanded respect. Without hesitation, Tiara calmly revealed the true scope of her demand. A leave of absence lasting 100 years. Arguments broke out as the academy staff questioned whether Tina had agreed to such a drastic decision. The village representative remained firm, insisting the matter had already been decided. Dismissively, Tiara brushed aside any resistance. She silenced opposition by asserting her authority, refusing to entertain any debate. Sarcastic remarks came from the side as another teacher commented on the absurdity of a century-long leave. The witch quietly observed Tiara's bold proposal, her expression unreadable as smoke curled from her long pipe. Setting her cup down, she suggested a deeper reason. Perhaps something connected to the World Tree. Discussions resumed with growing seriousness. Legends from the elven village were no longer dismissed as myths. What once sounded like fantasy now hinted at troubling truths rooted in history. Disturbing reports supported the theory. Vicious monsters had begun attacking in greater numbers across the western lands. Tiara's demeanor softened for a moment. Proud of Sagaro's insight, she praised her research with warm approval. Tiara narrowed her eyes, unimpressed by Sagaro's curiosity. She dismissed it as childish interference in adult matters. The village envoy stood firmly beside Tiara, declaring their intention to have Tina fulfill her inherited role. Reassurances followed the ritual, once performed centuries ago by Tiara herself. Required only a century of slumber. To the elves, this was merely a temporary measure to maintain balance with the World Tree. With their decision final, Tiara and her escort left the hall. Their footsteps echoed through the corridor, leaving behind uncertainty and quiet tension. Elsewhere, Demonio appeared, observing the events from afar. He noted how closely everything aligned with the predetermined storyline. Demonio froze as Tiara suddenly appeared before him. Recognition came too late. She had already noticed. Memories of the main story resurfaced. He recalled her strength, hidden beneath grace and subtlety. Confronted with the accusation, Demonio stood silently. Tiara's voice turned cold as she delivered her judgment. There was no escape. Without warning, she activated her magic. His body regressed instantly, transforming into that of a helpless baby. Tiara declared him hers now. Far from the academy, a carriage rolled through the royal capital. Inside, someone softly acknowledged the infant's name. Demonio. A new chapter had begun. Tiara smiled warmly and introduced herself as Mama Tiara. She embraced her new role without hesitation. Inside the carriage, an elf muttered about Tiara's strange habit. Though amused, he pitied the transformed boy. Without resistance, Demonio, now a baby, happily responded to her name. The others could only watch in disbelief. Confusion spread among the onlookers. One elf questioned how quickly a human could adapt to such humiliation. Tiara, meanwhile, found his new form absolutely adorable. Throughout the day, she fed him with care and pushed his swing like a doting mother. The royal capital faded into the background as the strange new bond between them deepened. Tiara gently rocked the baby in her arms. Her lullaby lulled Demonio into peaceful sleep. Moments later, he lay on a bench, overwhelmed by bliss. A nearby spirit commented with mild sarcasm. Sharon watched from behind. He warned Tiara about her behavior, voicing concern about the academy meeting. Her actions, he felt, had gone too far. Tiara dismissed his warning with a smile. To her, humans lacked the weight of consequence. She didn't share his seriousness. Looking at the sky, Tiara continued her thoughts. In her eyes, humans were fleeting, reckless, and not worth confronting directly. Conflict, she believed, only drained energy. Late at night, Demonio wandered into Tiara's luxurious suite, drawn by the comfort of familiarity. Inside, Tiara welcomed him warmly. She mentioned her exhaustion and playfully asked for a little help to ease her tension. Responding to her request, Demonio did his best, despite the obvious difference in size and scale. Tiara, amused, praised his effort. As his enthusiasm grew, Tiara gently stepped in. She reminded him, in a teasing tone, of certain boundaries he should respect. Afterward, she expressed her gratitude, patting his head affectionately. She chuckled, calling him a curious and amusing little one. Tiara questioned Demonio's approach, hinting at deeper suspicions. Her expression sharpened, contrasting with her earlier playful demeanor. The conversation shifted when another student mentioned Tina. Tiara's tone softened slightly as she acknowledged their connection, standing face to face. Tiara asked a quiet question, whether she had failed as a mother. For a moment, her confident presence wavered. Afterward, Demonio returned to the academy. The once casual atmosphere between him and Tiara faded, replaced by distance and formality. The next morning, news spread quickly. Tina had been taken away by her mother. Following the village's decision, a 100-year absence had begun. News of Tina's departure unsettled her friends. The reality of a 100-year absence quickly sank in. One classmate refused to accept it. His voice rose with determination. Unwilling to let her go so easily, the group quickly resolved to act. Their destination became clear. The elven village, where Tina was being held by tradition. Discussion turned toward Tiara. Among the group, frustration grew toward the woman who had overruled her daughter's will. Outside the elven village, resentment deepened. To them, Tiara was no longer just an overbearing figure. She had become a symbol of rigid authority, placing tradition above compassion. A quiet moment passed as Monica lowered her gaze, troubled by what she couldn't fully understand. Behind closed doors, Tiara placed a hand on her daughter's head. Her motives, soon revealed, were rooted in a deeper, selfless love. The world tree towered high, a sacred pillar that governed the land's magic and vitality. Far from the tree, chaos erupted in a human village near the elven borders. A massive bird-like monster tore through the streets, sending stone and timber flying while terrified villagers scrambled for shelter. Amid the panic, a mother shielded her son from the creature's attack, gasping through the pain. She urged her son to flee. Fear clouded his eyes as he hesitated, caught between obedience and dread for his mother's life. Determination ignited within the boy. His small body stood defiantly between the monster and the fallen woman. In a distant corner of the world, the massive world tree radiated power and life throughout the land. It nurtured everything with magic, but its wrath could destroy just as easily as it gave. Far from the tree, a peaceful village on the western continent was suddenly thrown into chaos. A monstrous bird swooped through the streets, sending villagers fleeing in panic. As the beast attacked, a mother protected her child with her own body. Debris scattered as they crashed to the ground, pain flashing across her face. Struggling to stand, she urged her son to escape. Fear filled his eyes as the boy froze, while the creature approached. Driven by desperation, the boy stepped forward. A cry of defiance escaped his lips. He stood between his fallen mother and the monster, ready to protect her at any cost. Villagers gathered in gratitude, hailing the black-haired noble as their savior. Deep in thought, he reflected on the world's imbalance. The violent beast rampages weren't random, they originated from the unstable world tree. Long ago, Mama Tiara had served as that offering. Now, the burden rested on her daughter, Tina, chosen to repeat the grim legacy. The Academy suspected strange occurrences near the elf village, but couldn't act directly. That territory, while within the kingdom, operated under different authority, creating complications. Any intervention required strict justification. As a result, official investigations moved slowly. The elf village, practically sovereign in practice, remained untouched, while time slipped dangerously forward. Tina, though only a first-year student, had been handed over without resistance to avoid sparking diplomatic conflict. Determined to intervene, allies Reddy and Rebecca had already reached the elven territory. Their mission, rescue Tina before it was too late. While the others focused on Tina, the black-haired noble had a different objective. He left the girl's fate to his comrades, choosing his own path. His goal lay deeper within the forest. There, someone important awaited. He wouldn't let the story unfold like before, not when someone he cared about was at risk. The original tale demanded sacrifice. However, it wasn't the daughter, but her mother who now faced the ritual. Demonio initiated a check in with Gloria, Mama, but accidentally caught her while she was changing, leading to an awkward moment that startled them both. Flustered by the accidental intrusion, he quickly apologized. After regaining her composure, Gloria confirmed that the surrounding beast threat had already been dealt with. Reflecting on recent events, she expressed regret for leaving Tina's situation solely to the students. Still, her concern was evident. Demonio reassured her with understanding. He recognized the deep care Gloria held for her students, offering both respect and support as the conversation ended on a warmer note. Though Reddy's group had reached Rest Village a day earlier, no updates had arrived since. As Demonio and his companion discussed traveling separately, she questioned why they hadn't joined the others. He offered no full explanation, only hinting at personal reasons. In the original game scenario, the protagonist's party was welcomed warmly at Rest Village. Demonio acknowledged that avoiding certain people also influenced his choice. Reishi and his group, seen as Tina's classmates, were offered food and hospitality at a seemingly generous banquet. Everything appeared normal on the surface. However, the celebration was a trap. The food had been drugged and the group was captured. Reichi noticed his restraints were different. One vine had been secretly cut, and the prison key had somehow ended up in his pocket, hinting at Tina's silent intervention. The situation mirrored a forced RPG event. The protagonist was separated from allies, unequipped, and forced to stealthily escape enemy surveillance. Demonio, observing from afar, concluded that tagging along with the main party would have meant getting dragged into scripted chaos. While the others remained caught in the village trap, he used the distraction to move unnoticed through the forest toward his destination. Unexpectedly, he encountered Raide just outside the forest. Both were surprised, especially since Demonio wasn't supposed to arrive until later. Raide tried to explain his chaotic escape. After being captured, he somehow ended up as the only one who managed to break free, but his stealth failed. The guard spotted him during his escape, completely ruining the intended flow of the scenario. Demonio was stunned. A failed mini-game meant trouble. That kind of failure could trigger a chain of difficult events, and he knew exactly how bad it could become. Trouble arrived immediately. A sharp-eyed elf descended upon them. Her presence overwhelming, their cover had been blown, and the situation escalated quickly. The elf recognized them at once. Assuming they had come to rescue their captured allies, she prepared for confrontation. Demonio, flustered, quickly denied being part of the group, hoping to avoid further complications. Ray demanded an explanation about the ritual. The elf guard coldly ordered them to surrender, claiming they would be released afterward. Upon learning Tina was the intended sacrifice to the world tree, Ray's resolve ignited. He swore to stop the ritual at any cost. Hovering above the tangled roots, the elf warned him not to interfere with traditions he didn't understand. The atmosphere grew tense. Faced with increasing danger and unfamiliar terrain, Ray steeled himself. Time was running out, and hesitation was no longer an option. Raising his voice, he called on Demonio to fight beside him. With determination in his eyes, Ray stood ready to challenge fate itself. A quiet riverbank concealed a sacred spring where a solemn maiden stepped into the still waters. Following the ancient rite, she began the ritual cleansing, immersing herself in the spring's cold embrace. The elder, with gentle features and a warm smile, recalled her own past. Centuries earlier, she had walked the same path. She reassured the young girl that every ritual required care and patience. Though the process was lengthy, she promised to remain by her side until the end. With warmth in her voice, the woman leaned closer and asked a simple question. She sensed hesitation, unsure whether the girl felt fear or awe for what awaited. Despite the concern in her voice, the girl remained firm. She insisted on continuing, fully aware of the burden. If she faltered, countless lives would face disaster. A ripple spread across the spring's surface. Quietly, she pleaded for understanding, her voice softened by determination. She reminded the elder of those still depending on her, especially the people at the academy. Urgency lingered beneath her calm expression. The woman gently acknowledged her concerns. With unwavering confidence, she assured the girl that everything would be taken care of. She promised to bear the burden herself if necessary. Far from the sacred spring, a fierce presence erupted. Another woman driven by fury, unleashed nature's wrath. Her command swept through the forest like a storm, targeting unseen enemies who had crossed a line. Massive roots burst from the ground as the forest answered the call. Two figures watched in amazement as twisting branches surrounded a lone warrior. One of the boys observed the battle closely. Realization struck. Elra's warriors didn't just fight within the forest, they controlled it. Ancient roots served as both shield and weapon. The forest itself defended the elves. Amid the chaos, one student panicked. His weapon was gone, still held by the elves. Without hesitation, Demonio rushed in. He threw a spare blade toward the unarmed student. Grateful and relieved, the boy caught it mid-motion, regaining a fighting chance thanks to Demonio's quick support. Demonio offered his blade without hesitation, then smiled and told his ally not to worry about returning it. Their battle had only begun. Back to back, the two warriors stood firm. Blades flashed together, cutting through wave after wave of thick living roots. Their opponent took notice. Recognizing their skill, he smirked and raised his hand. The ground trembled as something new began to take shape. Emerging from the forest's memory, illusionary figures started to form. Female bodies materialized, elegant and unmistakable. The summoner's twisted intent was obvious. Mocking his reaction, the enemy explained. These weren't real women, but memories of their comrades now fully exposed. Surrounded by illusionary figures of his comrades, the boy struggled. Though he knew they were fake, striking them felt wrong. Elsewhere, Demonio faced the same trick. Imitation women surrounded him. Moving with seductive precision, mockery followed. The enemy labeled all men as weak against temptation, flashing distorted memories of Demonio's past, implying indulgence and carelessness. Confidence radiated from every word, but Demonio didn't hesitate. With one clean slash, he scattered the false images. Shock rippled through the opponent. That level of resolve wasn't expected. Even the boy stared, stunned not only by the outcome, but by the unshakable clarity in Demonio's every movement. Observers watched in awe as Demonio's swordsmanship flowed without anger or malice, calm and unreadable. His expression revealed no tension. In that moment, he became the embodiment of swordsmanship, completely attuned to the battle. The boy clutched his chest, overwhelmed. Watching Demonio in action stirred something deep within him. As the illusionary forces faded and silence returned, Demonio staggered. The battle's strangeness finally caught up with him, leaving him slightly nauseous. His ally chuckled, noting even he had limits. Anger twisted across his face. He demanded answers, asking why someone with such strength had pretended to be meek. Recalling earlier encounters, he realized he'd been deceived from the start. Accusations flew as the defeated enemy pieced everything together. Demonio's awkwardness had been an act, a trick to lower their guard. Demonio simply smiled, pretending innocence. While one part of him played dumb, the other marveled at the confusion. Urgency returned. The team regrouped, preparing to head back to the village. Though the enemy was restrained, his warning echoed out. Stopping the ritual would bring consequences. Eyes narrowed, the restrained elf warned of the world tree's imbalance. Without an elven priestess, the entire continent faced ruin. Time was running out. His final words echoed throughout the forest. The violent changes in nearby beasts were only the beginning. Warnings intensified. Without a proper offering, the world tree's disruption would spark continent-wide disaster, mana loss, beasts, rampaging, and famine. For millennia, elves had preserved peace by offering maidens to the tree. This tradition, the prisoner claimed, was not cruelty but protection against catastrophe. He raised his voice, declaring that humanity's peace had always depended on the elves. But circumstances had changed. The boy questioned the cost. Would they truly sacrifice Tina for the world's safety? The forest, once sacred, now presented an impossible dilemma. Demonio responded solemnly. The world tree's condition had deteriorated rapidly, far ahead of the natural cycle. Tina would not die, he insisted. Though the elves claimed Tina would only sleep for a century, the boy clenched his fists. To humans, that meant saying goodbye forever. He remembered her dreams. Tina wanted to remain at the academy. That wish alone was reason enough to fight. He shouted his conviction. Sacrificing one innocent life, even to save many, couldn't be the only answer. Still, Demonio and the others realized he had no plan at all. The group paused. Demonio sent one elf to free the captives while he stayed behind. Grinning darkly, Demonio loomed over the bound elf. While others debated ideals, he chose action. He would extract every secret the elf knew. Starting now, Demonio approached with a grin, his tone sharp. He invited the others to step aside if they lacked resolve. With confidence, he confronted the restrained elf. She bristled with pride, claiming her strength as a warrior. Torture wouldn't work, she insisted. With calm intensity, Demonio called her by name, Sharon. Her body stiffened. He wasn't threatening her. Instead, he released her bindings, leaving her startled and confused. Demonio revealed her secret. Tierra Mama, the elder, planned to take her daughter's place in the ritual. Sharon's composure broke. Shock spread across her face. That hidden truth was known only to a few. Tierra's strength had been an act all along. Her plan was never to send her daughter. She intended to take her place, just like in the original tale where the mother was the one sealed away. Her return to the academy wasn't only to retrieve Tina, but to confirm something even more important, whether her daughter had formed genuine friendships. Driven by love and duty, Tierra prepared to sacrifice herself to protect both the continent and her child's future. As the group debated, reactions were divided. One cried out against sacrificing Tina. Yet when it came to Tierra, his tone softened. While chaos unfolded, Demonio cursed the protagonist's inconsistency. Only the mother earned his understanding. Demonio made a vow, no matter the scale of opposition, he'd use every resource to protect Tierra Mama together. They reviewed the world's sudden change. The world tree's condition had sharply declined, unnatural and alarming. Elsewhere, a different group reveled in chaos. Two men absorbed the world tree's magic, praising its incredible potency. A third figure, cloaked and composed, reminded them not to stray from their mission. Still, temptation was hard to resist. Grinning, they justified it all. No matter the destruction, the lives lost, or the selfishness, they believed Mama would forgive everything. To them, ruin was divine permission. Demonio dashed through the forest at full speed, a determined glint in his eyes. His owl companion kept pace beside him, leading the way. He arrived at the elf village's entrance and spotted his ally waiting. After a brief exchange, they regrouped, preparing for the next step. Inside, they discovered crates filled with recovered weapons and stolen supplies. Hope returned. Recovering their gear meant they could rejoin the fight and press onward. As one of them knelt to inspect the loot, the sound of heels clicking across the floor broke the silence. A voluptuous woman appeared, gracefully holding a glass of wine. Her carefree attitude contrasted sharply with the tension. Tina's mother revealed the ritual was already underway, dismissing any attempt to interfere. Despite their pleas, she remained unmoved. With a mocking tone, she knelt playfully, brushing aside the group's seriousness as childish whining. Maintaining her exaggerated maternal persona, she offered to help by lulling them into submission with baby talk and false kindness. Without warning, Demonio transformed into a baby-like state, leaving everyone stunned. His ally was caught completely off guard by the absurd sight. Realizing Demonio might have a strategy in mind, the other boy quickly followed suit, copying the transformation in hopes of keeping up. Demonio launched himself dramatically, slamming headfirst into his friend, breaking the tension with a perfectly timed strike. In his infant disguise, he burst into loud gibberish, insulting the woman while mocking his ally's unconvincing acting. Taking the cue, the blonde boy sprinted out of the room. Demonio's plan worked. He had created the distraction they needed. Left behind, Demonio remained in the woman's grasp, accepting his role. She, unaware of the trick, clung to her fantasy. Deep inside, she battled her own fears. Carrying the burden alone, she hid it beneath forced confidence. Demonio suddenly bit down, catching the woman off guard. His piercing gaze revealed he was finished playing along. With fierce determination, he declared his independence. No longer willing to pretend, he rejected false comfort and control. He lectured her on the meaning of true motherhood. A mother's strength rather than affection was what inspired him. Moments later, Demonio returned to his normal form. In his arms, he held the true target, Tina, safely rescued. Cradling the girl gently, he calmed her panic. Quiet reassurance replaced chaos as he whispered comforting words to ease her fear. Holding the transformed girl in his arms, Demonio calmly shared his view. To him, even strong women like mothers deserved moments of vulnerability. From the stairs, his ally approached, reporting that the academy students were doing everything they could to save the girl. He recalled the woman's earlier actions, cleansing herself in the sacred spring and drinking the ceremonial wine, fulfilling every shrine maiden's role. Realization settled over him. Her preparations weren't for tradition alone. She had intended to replace her daughter in the ritual from the very beginning. Sitting quietly, Demonio listened as she confessed her resolve. If her life could secure peace, she would not hesitate. The girl trembled in Demonio's arms. Emotions rising to the surface. Regret, fear, and confusion overwhelmed her all at once. Calmly, Demonio told her the truth. As a baby, there was no room for pride or duty, only vulnerability. The sealing ritual carried immense risk. For someone under 100 years old, survival was unlikely. The cost was almost always death. Still, the woman had already accepted that fate. She was prepared to sacrifice everything to save her daughter. Now facing mortality herself, the girl cried out. Even after living for centuries, she was still afraid of dying. Demonio reflected on his doubts. He had once wondered whether Tierra truly wished for death, questioning if saving her was an act of selfishness. That uncertainty had disappeared. With unwavering determination, he vowed to protect her, no matter the cost. Before he could act further, guards stormed in. Their sudden arrival cut the moment short. Without hesitation, Demonio sprinted through the exit, escaping with the girl in his arms as Tierra watched in shock. The guards rushed to her side, worried for her safety. She remained seated, quietly, watching him disappear from sight. Despite the chaos, Tierra responded with a faint smile. Though shaken, she insisted she was unharmed. With a blush and an uncertain expression, she softly whispered a denial. Whatever had just happened, she kept it to herself. Elsewhere, the arc reached its climax. Some sought to carry out the ritual, while others moved to stop it completely. Different forces acted in secret. Tierra tried to sacrifice herself in silence, while others maneuvered behind the scenes. And then there was Demonio, the one who defied the game's script. His actions created an entirely new path. At Noblesse Magic Academy, a communication arrived. The situation had become too serious to ignore. Reports cited the instability of the World Tree and a possible threat from the half-born cult. Reinforcements were approved. The elf leader expressed restrained gratitude. Despite the tension, he thanked Lady Sharon for her timely support. Although accepting help felt humiliating, he admitted it was necessary. Pride had to give way to survival. A flashback revealed the earlier argument. While Demonio encouraged requesting aid, the elf initially refused, unwilling to depend on humans. Demonio lowered his head in desperation, pleading sincerely. He had no pride left, only the determination to protect. When questioned, he didn't hesitate. There was no need for a reason to save a kind-hearted mother. Witnessing Demonio's sincerity, the elf leader finally understood. His own pride seemed insignificant compared to such conviction. Back at the academy, Headmistress Sharon smiled. Demonio's actions left a lasting impression. He was no ordinary student. As her assistant arrived with a book on non-violent teaching, the moment gave way to routine. But Sharon's gaze lingered on the name, Demonio Traitor. Mafayana glanced up from her chair, unimpressed. Despite the manual, her instincts still favored strict hands on discipline. To restore balance, the elven priestess was chosen to be sealed within the world tree. This ancient ritual, passed down through generations, was believed to calm the powerful forces dwelling inside. As the sacred ceremony progressed beneath the moonlight, the priestess walked forward with grace. From behind the trees, a figure watched silently. Demono, a heretic who opposed the ritual, waited in hiding. Before Demono could act, Ray and his companions arrived in haste. Weapons drawn and faces determined. They called for an immediate halt, unwilling to let the sealing continue unchallenged. Startled, the priestess turned toward the sudden intrusion. Ray stood before her, uncertain of what would happen next. Tears filled the elven girl's eyes as she finally voiced her true feelings. She no longer wished to follow the ritual. Silence followed her outburst. The high priestess approached quietly, then removed the ceremonial crown with a gentle smile. From the gathered crowd, whispers spread. Tiara, the high priestess, and the girl's mother stepped forward. Before anyone could stop her, Tiara chose to take her daughter's place. Guards intervened as the girl reached out, calling to her mother. But Tiara's resolve was final. With calm determination, Tiara ascended toward her fate. She entrusted the future of the elves to her daughter, believing in her strength and compassion to carry it forward. The girl turned to Ray, her voice trembling as she placed her hand on his. Standing apart, Tiara watched the scene with a faint smile. Memories stirred as she recalled her own youth, a time filled with similar dreams. Centuries earlier, she had felt the same warmth. 800 years ago, she truly believed in peace between elves and humans, her heart open and filled with hope. Love had once blossomed between her and a wandering traveler. The bond they shared was deep, but time had erased even his face from her memory. That love, pure and unwavering, was destroyed by the very customs she now upheld. Tiara climbed the final steps alone. As the shrine maiden, it was her duty to sleep within the world tree for a century to preserve peace across the continent. Ray's voice rang through the air, filled with emotion. He swore to wait for her, even if he aged and withered, promising eternal love without condition. Tears welled in Tiara's eyes. Though she doubted the future, his words brought her comfort. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe in miracles once again. Vines of the world tree wrapped around her as the sealing began. Despite the legend, sleeping was never literal. Trapped in darkness, stripped of movement or sound, she remained conscious. Her spirit, bound to the world tree, was constantly drained, yet her thoughts endured unchanged and alone within the void. Within the crushing silence of her prison, only one thought gave her strength, the chance to see him again. Years passed unnoticed. Still, her heart clung to the belief that he would return. 100 years later, that silent prayer remained the only thing keeping her spirit from breaking. Yet, when she finally awakened, reality greeted her with silence. The miracle she had longed for never arrived. He had died of old age, they told her. 15 years had passed since his peaceful passing. Before her stood a new generation. His children and grandchildren now carried on his legacy. Only a year after her sealing, he had married someone else. Together, they built a life, raised children, and found happiness in a world she had sacrificed herself to protect. Not once did he speak her name again, even on his deathbed. He passed away surrounded by family, his lips silent of the one who had waited a century for him. Her heart turned cold while she endured agony beneath the world tree. He had lived peacefully with another. From that moment on, the world lost its color. She numbed herself with wine, bitterly reflecting on her own naivety. Trusting a human had been her greatest mistake. Even resenting his choices felt foolish. Part of her still wished he had waited a little longer, just 10 years. Aunt's resentment took root. She could no longer see any good in him. She forced a smile while cradling her child, offering forgiveness to the innocent. Around her, human voices dismissed the past, calling it irrelevant. Eventually, she gave up on humans altogether. They seemed no different from children, selfish, forgetful, and quick to abandon what once mattered. Her life drifted into routine. Duty became her only guide. Raising children was no longer personal. It was an obligation carried out as the clan's leader. Despite everything, a part of her heart remained warm. Holding her baby in her arms, she found one truth untouched by betrayal. Her love for her child endured through it all. Tiara turned away from humanity. The burden of betrayal had left her unable to face them again. What had been taken from her, a future filled with love and peace, could still belong to her child. Even if only for a short time, Tiara wished Tina to enjoy a youth surrounded by warmth and shared memories. Every step Tina took toward coexisting with humans became more than just a path forward. It became a chance to rebuild what had once been destroyed. Though her hands trembled, Tiara told herself it was only temporary weakness. As the ritual began, her determination remained firm. Not once did doubt enter her heart. As the sealing ritual progressed, an unfamiliar force wrapped around Tiara's body. An ominous presence surged through the air. This wasn't the gentle magic of the World Tree. It was darker and corrupted. She immediately sensed something had gone terribly wrong. From the shadows, a masked figure emerged, laughing maniacally. He boasted about orchestrating every step. He had tampered with the World Tree, exploiting the elves' closed traditions. Predictably, they had panicked and rushed the ritual exactly as he had planned. Though surprised that Tiara had taken her daughter's place, the intruder accepted it without concern. Tiara struggled as corrupted vines twisted around her, tightening without mercy, mocking her sacrifice. The intruder ridiculed her resolve and belittled the love she had shown for her daughter. With satisfaction, the enemy declared his plan complete. Her suffering was met with ridicule. The man dismissed all her pain, claiming every act of selflessness had been meaningless from the beginning. A sneering smile spread across his face. He sarcastically thanked her, calling her devotion useless, a meaningless gesture in a plan that had already moved beyond her. But before he could celebrate further, a sudden fist slammed into his face with overwhelming force. Tiara's eyes widened as a figure she thought was long gone burst into action. The man's sudden arrival shocked her, breaking the tension in an instant. With a powerful strike, he sent the enemy flying across the battlefield. The overwhelming force disrupted the ritual and stopped the flow of corrupted magic standing firm. He revealed that this had always been his moment to intervene, when the hidden enemy was finally forced to act directly. In the original timeline, Tiara's fate ended here. Her magic drained away, her body left to wither. But history had now been rewritten. Looking up in disbelief, Tiara recognized the one who had changed everything. The enemy, now wounded and bewildered, demanded answers. From a distance, Tiara and her allies stood ready, knowing the crisis was far from over. Despite the enemy's interference, the corrupted World Tree remained unstable. Tiara's fate still loomed, raising concerns that the ritual might fall upon her daughter instead. Demono stepped forward with determination. He refused to allow any outcome that defied Tiara's wishes and assured the others that a better plan was already underway. He vowed to protect both mother and daughter. For him, honoring her meant preserving everything she held dear, not just ensuring their survival, but fulfilling her true hopes. As the ritual began, a mysterious light enveloped the area, stopping everyone in confusion. Soldiers stepped back, uncertain if the summoning had finished, while tension lingered heavily in the air. Without warning, two unfamiliar men appeared before the altar. One of them, Demonio, stood calmly. The other man, dazed and injured from the impact, gritted his teeth in pain. His sudden arrival had clearly startled everyone. Charging in with fury, the blond man blamed Demonio for ruining his plan and shouted threats, sword in hand. Demonio stepped forward. His eyes burned with determination as he declared that death alone wouldn't atone for such crimes. In the shadows, two figures argued over Dorodio's actions. One questioned his defiance, while the other dismissed the concern, insisting Dorodio remained essential to their strategy. As Demonio stood firm, three sinister figures emerged. He recognized them instantly as the source of every malicious scheme connected to the ritual and the forest's decay. The truth unraveled. These villains had corrupted the sacred ritual by sacrificing an elf shrine maiden, disrupting the World Tree's natural magic cycle that had sustained the continent for generations. Doroteo, arrogant and defiant, lashed out at his masked ally, rejecting authority. Despite differences in rank, their organization acknowledged no hierarchy. The woman invoked the name of the primordial mother, declaring that all sins would be forgiven under her will, regardless of the cost. Surrounded by twisting roots, Demonio faced Dorodio, who stood atop the rising branches. Their battle intensified quickly. Branches surged with magic as Dorodio controlled the forest. Dorodio lunged forward with a wild grin, striking fiercely. Demonio managed to block the blow just in time, his enchanted blade flashing in response. One swift counterattack sliced across Dorodio's stance, forcing him backward. From the sidelines, the woman gasped, her eyes widening as the attack landed. Warning him urgently, she begged Demonio to keep Dorodio away from the cursed weapon. Dorodio, known as Fuyukan, the soul drainer, was far more dangerous than he seemed. Dorodio grasped the enchanted weapon, draining its power through mere contact. His ability to absorb both life and magic made him a worldwide threat. With calm menace, he watched the boy retreat. Debris crumbled beneath his cursed touch, disintegrating on contact as he mocked his opponent. Because of this power, Dorodio could now control the World Tree's magic. Unlike the elves, he had stolen that right through force, not birth. Shrugging off the confrontation, Dorotheo dismissed Demonio as unworthy of his time. His allies remained motionless, quietly allowing him to lead without question. As a final move, Dorotheo captured the elf woman. Declaring her as his hostage, he warned Demonio to stay still or face the consequences. Dorotheo turned in shock. Demonio had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only ripples across the ground. Before he could respond, Demonio reappeared with calm precision. His gaze cold, he declared how predictable Dorotheo's every move had been. As Dorotheo shifted his attention to the elf hostage, Demonio struck. A powerful blow landed cleanly, catching the enemy completely by surprise. His sword plunged deep. Demonio whispered a warning. Never insult Tierra Mama again. The force of the strike sent shockwaves through Dorotheo's body. Though the hit appeared fatal, Demonio knew better. Standing ready, he watched Dorotheo collapse, but remained cautious. The woman asked if it was over, but Demonio answered grimly that such an opponent wouldn't fall so easily. Dorotheo's chest glowed ominously, radiating energy from the World Tree. He had absorbed an immense amount of ancient magic. Already a powerful wielder of forbidden spells, Dorotheo now possessed regeneration and near-limitless strength, with the World Tree's magic amplifying him. According to the original story, no one could harm him. He only became vulnerable when Tierra Mama's magic backfired within him. Tierra Mama, still restrained, warned there would be no convenient miracle if they wanted to save her. Victory had to come through their full strength without shortcuts or divine intervention. Despite his injuries, Dorotheo rose in anger. Demonio's allies reminded him not to underestimate the boy. He wasn't just a student. With his sword drawn and aura blazing, Demonio stood unwavering. His combat instincts were so refined that they seemed almost prophetic. Leaping into action, he broke through the bindings and caught Tierra Mama in midair. Despite her injuries, she insisted she was fine, but he held her tightly, offering silent comfort. Behind them, Dorotheo gave chase recklessly, ignoring his comrades' warnings. His rage boiled over as he swore not to let them escape. The two remaining cultists exchanged glances. One remarked how quickly the other had sided with Dorotheo. Grinning, the muscular man clenched his fist. He admitted he owed Dorotheo, having received some of the World Tree's magic as well. Power surged violently through the muscular man's body. With magic overflowing from the World Tree, he roared in madness and vowed to destroy every remaining enemy. Now intoxicated by strength, he saw the battle as the perfect chance to test his newfound power. Ahead of him stood two new challengers, a determined elf warrior and a nervous student. Meanwhile, Demonio dashed through the forest, carrying Tierra Mama to safety. She softly called his name, clinging to him as he pressed onward with urgency. Struggling under her weight, Demonio reassured her. It wasn't her size, but the strange gravity affecting his balance. Tierra Mama sensed the truth. Only one of the enemies was chasing them. A tremendous power gathered behind them. Though concerned for her safety, Tierra insisted they prioritize the villagers. Demonio calmly replied that he would handle it. Admitting his inexperience, Demonio wished he could solve everything by himself. In the end, he still considered himself an ordinary student. Despite his modesty, he embraced that title and prepared to fight. Releasing Tierra, he turned back with full determination. A massive slab of earth plummeted toward the terrified soldiers. They scrambled in panic as the battlefield shook beneath the enemy's overwhelming power. As the enormous boulder descended, Demonio recalled a student's greatest privilege, not power, but the freedom to ask for help. Just as the impact approached, a swirling force erupted. A powerful adult warrior intervened, crashing through the debris and cutting through the chaos. Without hesitation, the woman landed a crushing kick directly into the enemy's stomach. The brute cried out as his body was launched away, his expression filled with disbelief. The force of the strike sent him flying into the forest at explosive speed. Landing gracefully, the warrior stood ready. Her presence radiated experience and strength, a reminder that even heroes sometimes need someone stronger to step in. Demonio realized he didn't have to face everything alone. Trusting others was also a form of strength. His mentors stood ready. The guardians arrived, prepared to defend and fight beside him without hesitation.